who they are and what they want. Like
Right.
fucking like Trina. Trina got on, well, it's wild. Trick Daddy has a radio show in Miami. Trina got on Trick Daddy's show and she's like I know where Trina stands now. She's no longer my diamond princess. Like
Oh
she got,
no. Oh
yeah, so
no.
because she basically took the stance that everyone who's protesting is a looter, and then Trick Daddy of all people is like, he's defending people. He's saying we know it's only a handful of people who are doing the looting and who are causing the damage. Everyone else though was down for the cause, and Trina wasn't trying to hear that shit at all. So
Mm,
so she's no longer the diamond princess. But that's the thing, man. We got it.
damn.
Like this is the time where we have to know where people stand. We've maximized the point of people pussyfooting with what their stances are. Like it's one thing to have conversations in the workplace where that should be somewhere that's politically neutral, especially if you're a minority in your job. But everywhere else, you have to make a decision, man. Like we've come to the point where, like I said, people have to make a decision. And my tweet that I wrote, and even my podcast I just posted, like the episode I posted today, like the only question that I really have that needs to be answered for the country is, what are white people going to do to save this country? Like we reached a point where we have to openly start asking white people, what are they going to do to not only, and it's bigger than just Trump. It's like literally all facets of life and
Right.
where discrimination live and exist. So what are white people going to do to save this country? And I know you're recording this now. If this makes the episode, cool. If it doesn't, that's still okay. But if this makes the episode and whoever's listening to this voice, ask your white friends, what are they going to do to save this country? And if the answer is, support hatred, support this president, this, cabinet, this administration, if that's the answer, then at least be honest about it so we know where people stand.
Right.
Like there's kind of no ways around it. Like whenever people say Black Lives Matter, people want to pivot to All Lives Matter. Okay, so we know where you're coming from when you do that.
Yeah.
So we have to know where people stand, man. Like the pussyfooting is dead. Like it's over. Like if you support, if someone says Black Lives Matter and you immediately pivot to Blue Lives Matter, okay, we know where you stand. You're not
Hmm.
down for the cause. Like
Right.
it's kind of that simple. So yeah, man, it's
I
no one
agree.
pussyfooting around.
Well, whenever you get a chance, the episode is raw as fuck because it literally, because I knew it happened, but I also knew I couldn't. I had to literally like kind of box myself out of it for the rest of the week until like I got off work on Saturday, and then I could really start diving into all this shit. Even though I mean I was aware, but I just knew if I couldn't deal with it in that moment, or I would have just fucking completely shut down and be like, "Fuck it, I don't give a fuck," you know. And I finally started processing that shit, and then by the time I recorded that on Monday night, um, the very last thing I did was I watched the video again, and then it's just an hour of me just going over everything. It's raw. It's it's crazy, man. And then I posted it, but then Blackout Tuesday happened, so I didn't really promote it. But it's out there whenever you want to check it out.
I didn't watch the video, and so I never have plans on watching the
I
video.
didn't want to watch the video, but I felt like I had to see it for myself before I saw the pod. And oh man, don't watch the
I mean,
video.
that's
I
that's
don't watch the
definitely
video,
your
Marcus.
I mean, that's definitely your, perspective, but I will legit say for your mental health, I will legit say never watch a murder video ever again for the rest of your life. And I
Probably
really mean
not.
that from the,
Probably
well, no,
not.
like, I mean it from the bottom of my soul because you remember when the video was going around of the news reporters getting clapped? Like,
Hmm.
And for whatever reason, that was going around on Twitter or whatever. Like, that's when I made a decision. Like, I'm never going to watch those type of videos again. So, yeah, I would just say, just for your mental health, like, never watch one of those videos ever again for the rest of your life, man.
Yeah. Well, I probably won't. Welcome to the Barack Obama approved World's Greatest Podcast, Hyphen Nation. I'm your host, Kellen Conley, and in case y'all haven't heard already, I have 3 guests with me. George Gerbo, the Howitzer.
Yes.
Mike the Buzzsaw Asti is here. He's the gentleman attacking Gerbo over his iOS choices. Now he's not there.
Yes, I said him. Am I not here? I feel like
now you're here. Yeah, I didn't hear. I heard silence, so I wasn't sure. And then, as always, my semi-regular co-host Marcus Show and Mad Love Robinson is here.
Yeah. How's it
Big
going?
dog.
Oof.
There's a little woof for you. Yeah, we're talking about Zoom and how MacBooks don't work and how you shouldn't operate or update your stuff when new stuff comes out because it's
fantastic.
all conspiracy.
It's mine. It's specifically mine. It's okay. It's not the whole platform.
MacBooks are fantastic.
It's all right. I appreciate a little aggression just coming out at the top of the show. It just sets the tone for what may be a back and forth battle because, guys, we're here to talk about a little documentary that just finished a few weeks ago. And I know we're late, but there's a reason that I waited so long, and then we're going to get into this. The Last Dance finally finished on ESPN. It was 5 weeks of 2 parts every Sunday, 10 parts, 10 hours long.
I've watched it twice at this point.
You've watched it twice at this point, okay.
Yeah.
And of course, it was the Michael Jordan doc. It was a story of his last season as Chicago Bull in 1998 and everything that went with it, like all the drama and everything like that, basically told from Jordan's point of view. So I'm going to come in with a hot-ass take right off the top rope. Marcus, you'll appreciate this.
I will. I know I will. Go ahead.
Tiger King was a better documentary than The Last Dance.
Wow.
That's not a hot take.
It's not a hot take. I thought it would be.
I feel like you can't compare the two. I feel like it's just totally different. Like one's a documentary of a year, actually, really 20 plus years. It was really a career of Jordan, and the other one, it's a documentary, but it's of a totally different genre and of a crazy people.
A career of Joe Exotic.
I thought you were going to say one was a documentary, one was propaganda.
I mean, yeah, and that you could,
Propaganda.
People listening could pick and choose which one they think is which there. But yeah, I feel like you can't compare the two unless you're just comparing the entertainment value that we received during quarantine.
I mean, if you compare it for entertainment purposes, yeah, Tiger King is not hold a candle to Last Dance. But if you're looking at, if I had to say as far as like, neutrality and, sort of like journalistic integrity.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd say Tiger King is better than that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say one of them was, well, they both in a way, but one of them pushed a narrative even more than the other. And of course, in Tiger King, you had multiple narratives and multiple people pushing narratives. But I will say this about Tiger King, at least in comparison, even though you had multiple people pushing narratives, they all were at least freely in the documentary and able to push their narrative, even though we were able to leave that documentary feeling like everybody there is a bad person. Everybody there is pushing their narrative, where in The Last Dance, it was really Jordan pushing narrative and not letting anybody else get in to push their narrative. It was Jordan telling his story the Jordan way, and from what we've even heard that's come out since, I'm actually happy in a way. I mean, I was entertained by The Last Dance, but I'm kind of proud of people like Horace Grant and others that, yeah, Jordan's the GOAT, but You're not going to take crap from the man. Like if you feel like he's lying on you, you're going to speak up.
As you should, because when I first saw this trailer, and along with the rest of y'all, and that was what 2 years ago. Whenever they dropped the trailer, and they said it'd be 2020. They dropped the trailer, and it's called The Last Dance. And as the Bulls fan that I am, I know that was the name of their last season altogether. And I'm thinking we're going to get this well thought out team documentary
about the season too.
About the season with the greatest player ever, and then Scottie Pippen, one of my favorite players ever, as well as even down to like the Steve Kerrs, Tony Kukoc. I don't think Tex Winter's alive anymore, but Phil Jackson, Reinsdorf. Like I thought we were going to really get to see inside all of that, and then to watch it this here when it dropped in April, in April and May. And then we didn't have that. It was really, like you said, all about Jordan. I loved it in the moment. I was rushing my TV every Sunday night to watch it. There was nothing that was unearthed that was shocking to me or anything like that.
No,
not to say I knew it all.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Rodman in 72 hours in Vegas was not shocking.
Okay.
I didn't know that story. It was shocking
story.
It was shocking some tidbits about it, but I didn't know it happened. And if you were going to tell me that everyone would have believed that going in, if you would tell me that Rodman left for 72 hours and went to Vegas.
That's why it's like not shocking, because it's just quintessential Rodman.
Yeah, I mean it's just quintessential Rodman. I feel like that there was. I honestly, to be honest, I thought I was going to have to be the heel of the show, and Kellen, being the Bulls fan, was going to talk about how great the thing was. I'm not saying it wasn't an awesome documentary, but I guess I'm kind of aligned with what Kellen's saying. I don't feel like they broke any news at all. The entire thing, I pretty much knew it all except for some tidbits from the vacation markets. Yeah, that's the only part that maybe had some revelations just for how ridiculous, but we would have guessed it by being Rodman. But there was nothing that wasn't known. Like even the coverage on the national stations afterwards, where they're going in on Isaiah Thomas and the Dream Team and all of that, I assumed I was in the majority, whether you're a casual fan or a serious fan or whatever, that everybody kind of knew this because it was so publicized. But everybody knew that story. Everybody knew the situation with Jordan and Kerr. Everybody knew a lot of these things. Like a lot of these things have been spoken on by all of these people for years. The only thing that I find funny now that's happened, Kellen, and I'll actually give the floor here after I say this, because I think, Kellen, you really enjoy this. I could argue that since everything was already known and was already out there, and this basically became the Jordan narrative doc more than the actual documentary of The Last Dance or that last season, it was about his whole career and it was clearly from his perspective, that we already knew everything. So this almost ends up with egg on Jordan's face. I mean, in a way, obviously people may respect him more as a player, but after the documentary, I would imagine Jordan might even be sitting there kind of surprised that these guys who were always below him, that they always were sitting underneath the throne of Jordan, Horace Grant and Pippen and Rodman and Steve Kerr and all these guys, even if they start out by saying Jordan's the GOAT, we respect him, then they're going to come on TV and say Jordan lied there. That's totally not true. That's a lie. Isaiah Thomas is doing the media car wash talking about what's true and what's not true. And then we get audio that proves Jordan was lying when he says he had nothing to do with Isaiah Thomas not being on the Dream Team. And then there's audio where Jordan's talking about how he shouldn't have been on the team. Like, Jordan's being proven to be what people thought maybe, in which he pushes narratives and that he maybe is a liar. Jordan really does look worse from this documentary, whereas if he didn't do this documentary, everybody would have already known how great he was and known all these stories. But now these people are pushing back, and they wouldn't be out there pushing back and talking about this if there wasn't The Last Dance on TV for a month and a half. So all this, and it's not really making him look good in a way, which is what he said he did not want the outcome to be. But that is in a way the outcome, because it almost makes you look a little bit like, I don't care how great you are, but number one, nobody really likes liars. And number two, especially
he looks like a dick. Just say it. Michael Jordan comes off like a dick.
But the thing is, though, we're not even surprised that he would come off like a dick. My problem mostly is just the pure lying, because I think like the Isaiah Thomas situation is what he looks the worst on. Because yes, he admits Isaiah Thomas is the second greatest point guard and all of that, but ESPN later releasing audio that shows him literally saying exactly what he said in the documentary that he didn't say. Why would Jordan care so much to just bold-faced, blatantly lie to our face, that makes you look really wimpy, really chintzy, and I don't think anyone would respect that, regardless of his level of play on the basketball court. Like, he would have been better off saying nothing. He literally, like, we're living in a world right now where people, if they speak, they got to be careful with what they say. And sometimes when you put your foot in your mouth, you're better saying nothing. Like, Drew Brees was better saying nothing than saying what he said. Michael Jordan would have been better saying nothing than saying what he said, because he's been proven to be a liar. Everything's going to get unearthed these days.
But even if he's lying, it's like sometimes it's lies, intentional lies to manipulate his end means. Like that story that
what
he
does the
made up.
purpose serve? What does it serve him?
Because he's super ultra competitive. They ran that thing where he shamed that poor Bullets kid because he dared, say good game, Michael, to him, and then we don't even LeBradford Smith, yeah, and we don't even know. They said, "No, Michael made it up," but did he make it up? I don't know. I couldn't figure out what the truth was there.
He made it up. David Aldridge said he
made it up. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, Jordan's boys are not shying away. I mean, the only person that kind of dug himself a hole a little bit, which I'm sure we'll get to later, is Pippen, because Pippin's the only one that corroborated with what Jordan said in some things. But yeah. Everyone just is digging Jordan that hole. I don't think it changes his resume on the basketball court, but it makes him look more like a dick and a liar. And I feel like nobody would be talking about any of these negative things with Jordan, and he basically was Teflon. Nobody would ever bring anything up negative with him prior to this, and now he's just lying out of nowhere. Like, I don't know what the lying is. Like, I don't get it. His story without lying is good enough. You don't need to lie. I would have respected Jordan more if he would have went on there and say, yeah, Isaiah Thomas is the second greatest point guard of all time. Absolutely. But Isaiah Thomas is a jackass, and I didn't want him on the team, and I'm better than him. So I made the decision for us, and other people who were with me backed it. And that's it. Yeah, Isaiah Thomas, you don't have a gold medal because you got screwed in 1980 and couldn't play on that team either because of politics. That's right. I screwed you over. Because you know what he's thinking in his head.
I think he couldn't do that because I don't think it was just Jordan, honestly. I think literally every person did not want Isaiah.
It wasn't just him. But
him and Magic had big problems.
Right. But why did Jordan care to
want him?
Yeah, and that looks bad. Like, if I'm Isaiah Thomas, I would be mostly pissed at Chuck Daly more than Jordan, because that's my coach.
Your coach don't want you on the team.
I know, that's insane. But, like, I guess, Marcus, it wasn't just Jordan's decision, even though he's a top dog, but why does Jordan go out of his way to say that it wasn't his decision at all when that's a lie? Why couldn't he just say, yeah, I'm involved?
I don't know. He gambles. Who knows? Like, maybe he was gambling that no one would catch the lie. Like,
he just lying. Oh yeah, we should start betting on how many lies he has. If we're making a lot of cash.
Oh, the over.
I think he even looks horrendous in the rivalry with Charles Barkley. I was watching yesterday an interview that Charles Oakley did with Chris Broussard about that, and Charles Oakley tried to defend Jordan there and say Barkley's worried about things that shouldn't be worried about. But all it comes down to is Jordan doesn't like being criticized, even when it's true. Like, come on. It's like Jordan's like 15 years old.
It is. And what a lot of what this doc did was remind me of his retirement speech, because all he did every chance he got, whether it was Scotty, whether it was Horace, whether it was Kukoc, whether it was any rival hit.
Freaking Luke Longley couldn't get in the damn documentary.
I was mad Luke Longley wasn't. But all he did was just take shots the whole documentary, and there was some real honest moments in it. Like when he said, "I never asked these guys to fucking do anything else that I wouldn't do," which was a big moment for him. He got teary-eyed. That felt genuine. There was a lot of genuine Jordan moments.
There were some genuine moments. Yeah,
the Isaiah Thomas stuff was befuddling. I had no idea why I sat there and said no when I knew it to be true that he was part of the reason he's kept off the Dream Team, and Magic Johnson another reason that Isaiah was kept off the Dream Team, and then the whole Horace Grant thing.
Magic was part of that too, and at least Magic owns it.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole Horace Grant thing with him being Sam Smith's source in the Jordan rules. Yeah. I've read the Jordan rules front to back 15 times, and I will tell you that every one of those players on that 91 Bulls team was talking to freaking Sam Smith.
Yeah, the whole
Jordan, Pippen, Grant, Paxson, B.J. Armstrong, Tex Winter, you name it. They were talking to Jerry Krause. They were all talking to Sam Smith at different points. Yeah. And Sam Smith had access. And so for him to just all of a sudden be like, he's the reason that book came out, and that's when people started really being mean to me. Like when they found out about my gambling and how much of a bad teammate I was. I mean, you punched Will Perdue in the face, dog. Like, come on.
Okay, Jack, this is a We Should Do This Again Sometime podcast ad, take one.
In a world where laughter was king.
No, in a world, Jack.
What do you mean, no, in a world?
It's not that kind of podcast.
In a land that...
No, in a land either.
In a time...
Nah, I don't think so.
In a land before time.
Jack, this is a cartoon movie, and we may get sued if you use that. Can you say We Should Do This Again Sometime is hosted by Kat Chinetti and the Mark Robb, please?
One man.
No.
When your life is no longer your own.
What does that mean?
When everything you know is wrong.
Okay, bro, that's enough. We should do this again sometime with Kat and Mark coming to a podcast app near you. Someone get this guy out the booth, please.
No, I like it in here.
It's also to the fact that, another thing that this unearthed about Jordan is not only is he a liar and wants to push his own narrative, which I guess everyone with an ego and gets to that level kind of does, which is fine. We can tolerate that. But the other issue, I agree, Jordan's the GOAT for sure. He's the greatest of all time. He has that resume. However, this is weird to say. I almost feel like that even though people are still going to, who think prior, are still going to agree that he's the GOAT, and he probably did get more people to feel that way, that were maybe younger fans than before, which maybe is his goal as well. However, I think actually LeBron oddly comes out of that kind of looking good in a way in that debate, because the other part of it is, it also shows, and I'm not talking about the difference of them socially, because that also made Jordan look bad, where he basically said, yeah, I didn't care to speak up for this politician. Like, Jordan looked like a dick again. He's like, I don't care to speak up here, but I'm going to go ahead and lie over here.
White
like,
people buy Jordans.
Yeah. I mean, again, like, he didn't defend that at all, but he's lying about everything else, that he spent 3 hours on 2 different episodes that he's still defending the Isaiah Thomas. I thought I was hallucinating one night that we're still in the same episode. All of a sudden, it's still him talking about that, and we transition episodes already because I watched them back to back. But It makes LeBron look good because it shows that LeBron is being criticized more. LeBron doing it in the social media age is worse. He's dealing with more buffoons. He's having every one of his movements in terms of even his level of play is getting criticized and hated on more. Jordan was heralded for scoring 60-plus points in a playoff game in which his team lost. If LeBron scores 60-plus points in a playoff game in which his team loses, he is blasted by every single national outlet, by every single national talking head, by Skip Bayless, even people on Twitter. They're blasting LeBron. And all with Jordan is, he couldn't win until he got help, until Pippen got better and they got him help. With LeBron, anytime he gets help, he couldn't win unless he gets help. LeBron gets unjustly criticized, whereas Jordan never got criticized for any of the same stuff. And all this documentary did is highlight it all. Anyone sitting there, like, it just made it look ridiculous for Skip Bayless to criticize LeBron because he leads in every single category but loses a playoff game, and then go ahead and defend that with Jordan. I mean, it just made it look even more ridiculous than it was. So I think it kind of stands out that LeBron's had to put up with more crap because of the era he's playing in, when in reality, again, Jordan 6 championships, 6 finals MVPs, but he didn't team winning rings until everybody else started playing better around him. He didn't start winning rings until some other rivals of his got older.
On the triangle.
Yeah, and still until he didn't win one ring without Scottie Pippen. He didn't win one ring without Phil Jackson. When he retired and had his little brief respite to go play baseball, Scottie Pippen took that Bulls team pretty deep in the playoffs and almost after Game 7 into the Eastern Conference Finals. After they left in 98, where the last dance a little shuts off because Jordan doesn't want to talk about it anymore, Scottie Pippen goes ahead and has multiple playoff runs, almost takes the Trailblazers to the finals without Jordan. Jordan needed some help too. Criticizing LeBron because he can't do it alone is just ludicrous, and I think this highlighted the entire fact that to win a title you need a team, not an individual. And Jordan's not perfect. Like, he's not literally Black Jesus. He needed help, and maybe the teammates that he had were better, and maybe he didn't need to go leave to another team to win rings in his prime because he had all the horses with him. And Kellen, I know we've had talks about this before, and you blame Jerry Krause for breaking it up, and I'm not saying he didn't break it up, but Jordan, I don't think, gives enough respect to Jerry Krause, as much of a heel opinion as this might be. Every time Jordan needed something, he got it, and Jerry Krause got it for him. Every time LeBron wanted something and he's complained that he needed more help here, more help there, everyone told him to shut up and dribble, and you don't need more help. You already got enough. Jordan got every single piece he needed all the time and had multiple Hall of Famers on that roster for several of those rings. And that highlighted it all on The Last Dance.
That is, that's very true. So, we'll pass it over to Marcus here. Marcus, how do you feel about Jerry Krause's portrayal in the whole film, considering that he passed away a few years ago and couldn't be a part of it?
I mean, there's a part of me that wants to say something stinks about throwing dirt in a dead man, like flat out.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I mean, it's funny, like Jordan is definitely a lot of propaganda in this documentary, but that's not one of it. Like that's how they honestly felt about that man. And they in themselves, they didn't really give him enough credit. But at the same time, this is a guy who has, at that point in time, people were praising the greatest basketball player ever. People praising Pippen as the greatest number 2 ever, the greatest coach ever, like winning consecutive, championships. And the ego that he has to say, even if you win 82 games and win a championship, we're not bringing your coach back. Like that is something that is indefensible, that he could not say,
right?
Even if he was alive, like the explanation for him explaining that away has to be, Phil Jackson has nude pictures of him or something like that.
That was crazy. But I feel like Ronsdorf gets let off the hook a little bit, though. It wasn't just Krause making comments like that and making decisions like that.
He 100% does. So if Rinders could have just fired him and kept everyone together and let Krause go, but he didn't. So, there's a lot of kind of scapegoating on Krause, and maybe because, the relationship between Reinsdorf and Jordan is maybe a bit closer than what the documentary, kind of lets on. But yeah, man, I think the way they threw Krause under the bus, I mean, we definitely give praise to Jerry West, for everything that he's built for his long career post, actually playing. I mean, but it's basically, to my eyes, it's basically Jerry West and Krause.
Yeah.
As ones and two, basically. Yeah. So they shit on him so much and they make fun of him so much in this documentary. It's really hard to appreciate the fact that
he did on your growth. Like, come on.
Yeah, like
the fat jokes and the short jokes were a bit gratuitous. Like that's where I'm okay with you, man. Jerry broke up this team. If you want to keep repeating that into the ground, even though he can't defend himself, fine. But like, man, they went all in on, like, you got to air every single time Jordan called him short and fat, like every time, because it certainly felt like it.
I mean, and also to the fact of every time there was a little blurb that could be a compliment. Like, for example, Jordan did admit Charles Oakley was my boy, but Krause ended up making the right decision by trading Charles Oakley, which was controversial at the time, and nobody liked it even in Chicago at the time. But that ended up working out clearly, and Jordan for 20 seconds will say, yeah, you know what, that worked out. If it had to be a compliment about how Krause, he broke the team up, but he also built the freaking team that he's a Hall of Fame builder and built Jordan. He gave athletes today, and athletes really ever, they want to win, but they want to have an ownership that wants to win as much as they want to win and will do anything that they can to help them win. Jerry Krause did everything he could to help Jordan win. He broke it up at the end, but prior to that, I mean, there really was nothing else that anyone could have asked of that man. I mean, he's answering every freaking wish. It just was interesting that every time there was a compliment to be paid, it was a quick blurb that if you went to the bathroom, you missed it. If there was a way to bash him, they had clips of them all bashing him. And it wasn't like Krause was making every one of these decisions on his own. Right. Like it's interesting to me that Jordan and Pippen in particular, because obviously he didn't get paid to what he should have got paid for as a top 50 player and his level of play, at least in the early end.
I have something to say about that one here in a second. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Mike.
But I get his issue money-wise, but they all love everybody else involved with the Bulls brass. Like, it's unbelievable. They love Reinsdorf. They even love Rod Thorne from the beginning. They love everyone else, and they hate Jerry Krause. It was not like Jerry Krause was God and was just unilaterally making these decisions. He had a boss, too. He had people he was talking with, too. Reinsdorf was in these decisions. He was well aware of the 82-0 comment. He was well aware of everything. If Reinsdorf didn't want to have that be the situation, he could have forced it to keep on moving, or he could have trumped Jerry Krause. And Reinsdorf made comments in the Last Dance, even saying that the reason why I supported it is because I knew these guys were getting older. The value wouldn't be there later, so I wanted to get the peak value. Well, let me put you this way, Reinsdorf, you were wrong. Steve Kerr won multiple titles later as a role player on multiple other teams with the Spurs after the fact. Pippen led a Trailblazers team that was pretty deep and got better than the Blazers had been for 10 years after the fact. Rodman was done, sure, but there was still value out of these guys, and for one more year in a strike-shortened season with a lockout where you're playing half the year and the Knicks are getting out of the East for crying out loud as an 8 seed, you guys could have crawled out of there one more year and got another shot at it that would have been historic. So it wasn't just Krause. For Ron to corroborate all that, and why do those guys love him when he made the same decisions?
That's what I find interesting. But sidebar back to Pippen. Pippen signed a rookie deal when he came in the league in 1987. Right. And Scotty's whole thing was they touched on the doc that his dad had this crippling disease, and I think maybe his brother, someone else, was very sick. Scotty had this super fear that coming from a small town and everything, and all of a sudden he's an NBA player, he's playing next to one of the greatest players of all time. He had this huge fear that at any moment something major could happen to him. And so Scotty whined about his contract, and finally after the 91 season, they said, all right, we're going to extend you, but we're going to give you this long ass contract that doesn't end until 1998. And we're going to pay you all this money, but it looks good to you in 1991 when you're young and you won a championship and you're just happy to have a contract in front of you. They gave him this long ass contract, all this money spread out. And then from there, he kept getting better and the Bulls kept getting better, and his money stayed exactly the same because he wanted to have guaranteed money because he was so afraid something would happen to him. And then by the time 97 rolls around and 98 rolls around, then he's back to, I'm underpaid. And it's like, yeah, you were, Scotty, but if you don't recall, you're the one who cried about your rookie deal because you're afraid something's going to happen to you because of your family history. So I can never really get behind Scotty saying he's underpaid because he made that choice as a young man to sign that contract. And yeah, the Bulls could have renegotiated it at some points, and he just never did. Reinsdorf and Krause were always known for being cheap. I mean, Jordan was one of the was underpaid for years and years and years until like his last 2 seasons when he did those 1-year deals for like $30 million. So I always find it interesting whenever Scotty is brought up. But to go from Krause not taking all the blame over to Reinsdorf, Reinsdorf even says finally in the last episode when Jason Hare shows Jordan the iPad, and he's like, this is what Reinsdorf said, and Jordan's like, I've never had an explanation for this. And it's like, really, Mike? But okay. Come on. Yeah, and then Reinsdorf says, we knew, like you said, those guys are getting old.
Somebody, that's what I'm saying. He got some naked pictures. Like he got
he might. But Reinsdorf's like, those guys are getting old. I even reached out to Phil and said, look, we'll bring you back, but we're going to start rebuilding because we can't. We do not want to pay all these guys for another year. I mean, of course, there was no plan for a lockout then. I mean, it was looming, but there was no guarantee that the lockout would last like it did. So they did not want to pay those guys for another year. They wanted to bring back Phil. Reinsdorf did. He wanted to bring back Jordan. Scotty was going. I don't think there was any way to get Scotty to come back, no matter what. Even if Phil and Mike were still there, Scotty was going to find his way out of there.
I don't know if they would, but I don't know if they didn't. To be honest with you, though, if you have Jordan come back and a whole cast of characters around him that aren't the same cast of characters, that are younger, that he's going to get pissed at, you don't have a clear number 2 because you just have maybe like a 3 you're saying is a 2, unless they somehow really pulled off that Tracy McGrady trade, but that would have been a rookie McGrady. He might not have been ready yet. He took a couple years to get going. I don't know if that Bulls team would have been close to as good as before, and even though they might have come out of the East because the Knicks did out as the 8th seed, Jordan probably would have then ended up in jail and would have really hit someone or something. That would have been a bad. I don't think Jordan would have liked that season.
He would have probably retired still. But Phil said no, and then ultimately that's when they made the Tim Floyd hire, and then history was written the way it was. So to pass it over to Gerbo over here, Phil Jackson is probably the only other person in this documentary who looks as good as Michael throughout the whole film.
Oh, right.
What did you think of Phil's portrayal in The Last Dance?
I kind of wanted to hear more from him because, everything we didn't get, they touch on the Zen thing at the beginning and then the burning of the papers at the end. But they, I just kind of like, what made this work? Because then he obviously you see what he does and he goes to Los Angeles and does what he does there. Like, what about him makes him so dynamic as the greatest coach arguably in NBA history? So I thought he came out, pretty well in this. I just thought when they went to him for bites, they weren't as kind of detailed as I was expecting them to be. You heard a lot from Jordan. I would have liked to heard more from Pippen personally. You touch on the iPad thing, and like it was cute at the beginning. Quite frankly, by the time I got to like episode 6 and 7, like I'm getting like pissed that they're letting Jordan respond to all this shit. Like Gary Payton, the glove. I didn't have no trouble with the glove. I'm like, fuck you. I mean, I see them watching the highlights, like I see you have trouble with Gary Payton, like
and it's also like it's not embarrassing. Like the thing is that I don't think that they're
like you won the title. Just admit that like Gary Payton got me in game 4 or whatever it was. No, he can't even do that.
I don't think Jordan gets to that. Like nobody, not anyone alive. Everyone may think Jordan's the GOAT in his eyes, and majority probably do, but nobody in the world thinks Jordan is literally perfect. There was gonna be a moment in certain games. Like Jordan even tried. This is one of the things that Jordan flat out lied, and this
you
was
won't even admit it. Is the thing like
yeah,
it's been 20 years. You won the titles. Everybody loves you. Just be like, man, Gary got me in that game, but we got the ring. No, he's still pissed off at these people.
Well, really, you know who looked bad in that series? Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania's own George Karl looked like he didn't know how to coach. I mean, he had a 3-0 lead in the series, or he had a 3-0 deficit in the series. Did the Sonics? Jordan had a 3-0
talk
lead.
to him at that restaurant because they both went to Carolina.
Well, forget the talking to him.
And that's got to be a lie
Gary
too.
Payton throwing George Karl under the bus by saying that George Karl refused to let Gary Payton guard Jordan prior to Game 4. It's like you're telling me that we're in the NBA Finals right now. You're going up against a Bulls dynasty. You got a squad with a great team, but only one Hall of Famer. Your Hall of Famer is known for defense as well as offense, even if Jordan doesn't want to give him credit. Jordan's talking smack. He's talking smack. You want entertainment as well. And you don't let this man even get a look to do a guard and he put his hand in anyone's face. It's Jordan until Game 4 when it's over. Either George Karl has a personal problem with Gary Payton or he didn't know what the hell he was doing. Like, that's insane. Like, that made George Karl look bad. That's why he hasn't won a championship. He didn't know what he's going down once you get to the playoffs. Like, that basically crapping on Gary Payton made no sense. Like, no one thinks Gary Payton's better than Jordan, but he's certainly a Hall of Famer. That didn't make sense to me. But then there was even the moment that Jordan sold in one of those playoff series where he went to Vegas and came back late, and it was that East Finals game. And Jordan and everybody else was like, yeah, man, you know what? Everyone else would get criticized for this. I know LeBron would get criticized for this now, but you know what? It's no big deal when it's Jordan because he came out there and balled out the next day and we won. And you look at the stat line, it's like, no, Jordan, you had 9 points. You were like 4 from 30. You were awful. You clearly were drunk and hungover. What the hell are you talking about? You won the game because Scottie Pippen balled out, who you don't give credit to again. Like, you're the best ever, but you sucked in a game because you were out until 6 in the freaking morning. What are you talking about?
Did y'all hear George Karl's reason they lost the 96 finals that came out like late last year?
No, what was it?
Here's the quote. I lost that series on a technicality. Our second game in the series was in Chicago. It was a night game. It started late. It was an NBA game. It was long. We played well, but we didn't play well enough to win, and we lost. For some reason, I decided to fly home after the game. In my opinion, that cost us a series. Karl continues to explain they had some flight issues, had to stop in Montana to refuel, and they arrived in Seattle at 5 a.m., and that completely messed up the team's sleep pattern, and the next game was Sunday at noon. The Sonics looked tired and flat in that game, and Karl sees his decision as the cause of that. So not on like it wasn't that it was the 72-10 Bulls, and it was the fact that if they had just waited till Sunday to go home or the night after instead of going home right after the game, if they had waited till morning to go home, that would have swung the whole series, and the Sonics would have upset the Bulls in '96.
That's great. Yeah, I mean that's just a situation where the Sonics were a great team, but they ran into a buzzsaw, and they a lot of these teams in the '90s they were really really good. The Jazz as well, and they just picked the wrong time to get good. Like for example, if the Jazz would have made the finals in '99 instead of '98 and '97, they would have certainly beat the Knicks. Are you kidding me? It ended up being the wrong time for them. But I don't know if George Karl was asleep, and that's why he didn't slot Gary Payton in as the guy guarding Jordan. He's probably trying to argue that was a great decision of his to get him a game. But I mean, that's just insane. Yeah, I don't. That's just like Jordan can't give anybody else credit for anything. The people in the world are the worst. When if something goes right, it's all them. They get all the credit. If something goes wrong, it's everybody else. I did nothing wrong. Look at everybody else sucking, and that's why we lost. And that's how Jordan comes off. That's annoying.
Yeah.
That's all.
Marcus, as the documentary progressed, was there anybody that you were hoping we'd see more of, or at least get more screen time in the story of the Bulls, or did you kind of know what the fucking vibes was by the time episode 1 was done?
Man, we needed more cocaine circus stories, man. And talk about lies. Okay, so. I'm not going to accuse Michael Jordan of doing hard drugs. That's not what I'm about.
I was about waiting for that. I was like, oh, we got a soundbite. We should throw it to ESPN. I think we'll go viral here if Mark isn't going to accuse him of doing cocaine.
So he's saying he walked into this hotel room and it's all this wild ass shit. So he got the coke, we got the line sniffers, we got the drinkers, and we got the honeys. You're saying you're telling me that Michael Jeffrey Jordan didn't want one of those three? Not a he didn't want nothing. Okay, Air Jordan.
Which one do you think he got?
Oh, I mean
the honeys, yeah.
Well, I mean, it could be 2 out of 3, George. It doesn't have to be 1 out of 3.
I would just go for the honeys. So
I mean, it could be 3 out there.
We know how you roll.
I think George could handle those honeys.
It's also fair.
I think we needed definitely more Dennis Rodman stories being Dennis Rodman. Like, it was obvious that if anyone was not going to come back after that 6th title, it was Rodman.
Right.
But goddamn, like we needed more 72-hour in Vegas trips. Like we needed.
I'd watch a whole film just on Rodman. I know they already did it on the 30 for 30, and I know he was heavily involved in the Bad Boys one too. So Rodman's been in. He's pulled the trifecta. But I'd watch
the triangle.
I'd watch 10-part on just Rodman.
Wow.
I think out of guys that came out looking well, I think Rodman comes out of this looking good. I know he had the alcohol problem, and I know that he was a pain to deal with, and I know his personal life and the craziness. But let me put it this way: this dude, and Isaiah Thomas has said this. Not only is he's a 5-time champion, he's the greatest rebounder of all time, but back in the day, he was winning rings, getting 17 rebounds a game, making $800,000 a year. He then decided to dye his hair, put a wedding dress on, and start dating Carmen Electra and every other model around. And he had 17 rebounds a game and was winning championships and making $17 million a year. This dude was a marketing sensation who might be the smartest marketer ever. You got to be kidding. I mean, that was fantastic. He did nothing different, all of a sudden making way more money because he arguably was more famous than even Jordan in those couple years.
Well,
maybe.
I've lived in San Antonio for about 3 years. I literally cannot imagine Dennis Rodman living in this one course.
him and David Robinson playing together. Like, come on.
Like, he must have set this motherfucker on fire when he came here, man. Like,
that's what started.
Like, the only thing that I want for Christmas is a 91 Rodman jersey. Like, that's all I want for Christmas, man.
Oh, dope.
Bulls one, man. But I mean, for like a serious tip, I mean, like, I don't necessarily think that I wanted more players specifically because it was either going to be players that he beat that were going to be like, yeah, we got our asses kicked, whatever.
Right.
I know that I know Longley got approached, and I think Longley declined. I know they approached Malone, and Malone declined. I don't want to
mess with Karl Malone.
Well, Lamone's sound bites are awful. Somebody asked him in an interview after The Last Dance, and what do you think of Michael Jordan? And he said, "Well, when I hear Michael Jordan's name, I think Michael Jordan. He's Michael Jordan." It's like, all right, dude.
With his fake country accent.
Yeah, it's a rough soundbite.
He's a hick, though. He's fishes and does all that stuff.
Oh,
right?
he's a hick, but that is not how Karl Malone talked when he's in the NBA. he definitely did not talk like this. And like, John hunt me with a good pass, and I made the layup. Like that is the comparison.
Well, I am white. Unfortunately, I can't do it. But he gave you I'll send you a link. Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, for me, because it was a layup piece. Like this is just a shotgun blast of nostalgia. So the only thing that would have made it better if they were just like giving away champion jerseys to viewers. Like there was nothing. I legit don't think there was. I don't think there was much more to extrapolate, especially coming from. I mean, everything was slanted. Like obviously, to get Jordan's permission, there are going to be concessions that they had to make. So if this is like Ezra Edelman, making the Last Dance documentary, like it would have been from multiple angles, from multiple different players, but Jordan wouldn't have been a part of it. So kind of got what we got. That's kind of it.
Yeah.
Well, and then even in, they do the 95 thing with him coming back after baseball, and basically it's like, oh, he didn't have his basketball legs under him, and he just didn't have a full season under his belt. Like, if he's the greatest basketball player ever, then he should have been able to will them into the finals. So they find I get it. Like, I get the practical transition from baseball back to basketball, but they found a way to kind of whitewash that and be like, oh, if he only had a full season of games and playing under him, they would have won the title that year, just like they would have won in '98. All this conjecture shit. Like, it's just it was just a little over the top at some point.
The Bulls were like mediocre until he came back, and then he led them into the playoffs, and then they gave a decent series of Magic. They didn't come close to be the Magic, but still.
No. Yeah, but to be fair to Pippen and the rest of the Bulls, they had the same team, and you just take Jordan off of it. So then, for example, let me put it this way: if you have Pippen and the rest of the Bulls without Jordan, that ends up being the same situation. Yeah, well, Horace Grant. That ends up. Well, he was on the Magic then, but that ends up being the same thing. The Pacers had the same thing. The Knicks had the same thing. The Suns had with Barkley, where you have one Hall of Fame star and the rest of these guys circling around the axis. Jordan and the Bulls, and Jordan's better than them. But if you look at the teams, it talk about the Warriors. It's no different than when the Warriors stacked the deck and added Kevin Durant, and you had 3 Hall of Famers instead of going against 2 when it was the Warriors versus the Cavs, and those three out of the 4 when Durant got there. Jordan had a Hall of Famer with him. It was 2 Hall of Famers, and then eventually 3 with Rodman. Versus how many Hall of Famers were on the Suns besides Barkley? How many Hall of Famers were on the Pacers?
Is Dan Marley in the Hall of Fame?
I know Chris Mullin was there with the Pacers in that one on the bench, but like in terms of Hall of Famers that actually were still good and playing well into their prime, it was just those lone Rangers. And with the Knicks, it was just Ewing. So Jordan had a stacked deck in his favor, and he got the job done. But the only thing that's underrated in Jordan's favor, I will say, is the baseball career. I think people underrate that historically and make fun of it all the time. To transition from another sport and play baseball at even a minor league level like that after not playing baseball for 10 years and ended up with that many stolen bases, ended up with an average like that, even though it wasn't good, but it certainly wasn't 0, and you end up driving in 50-plus runs. I mean, he embarrassed himself because he's Michael Jordan, but that wasn't that bad for somebody that hadn't played in 10 years. That baseball run's a little bit underrated. And that's hard to do at that level. Have 30 stolen bases, 50 RBI, hitting 200, but it's not like he's hitting 102. Yeah, I mean, it's not that ridiculous. Like, honestly, that does lead me to believe if he would have played baseball in the minors another year or 2, he might have got himself a cup of coffee, if not more than that. Like, the whole comparisons of who had a better baseball run than him versus Tebow or all these Instagram posts. Jordan's baseball time was not that embarrassing for somebody who only tried the craft for a few months after not doing it for a decade. So that was kind of glossed over, but that would have made him look better if they would have spent more time on that.
I actually found it really puzzling that they kind of just is like, oh, BJ Armstrong was like, hey, do you want to come play basketball? And he's like, you know what, let me go play some basketball. And then all of a sudden he's like, you know what, I'm going to come back. Like, I know there's a whole lot more backstory to it. And Gerbo, I'm going to hand this one to you because you and I both know how heartbreaking the 1994 strike was for the Cleveland Indians. Because the Indians were killing shit. And then the strike happens. And
the Indians had several other opportunities, but yeah.
Shut up, shut up, Asti.
Yeah.
The point is, there's no mention.
The 97 Game 7.
Shut up. There's no mention of the baseball strike at all. Yeah. And no mention of Reinsdorf. They kind of mentioned that he owned the White Sox and Jordan was a Bull, but no mention of Reinsdorf squeezing the players and being a major part of why the strike went on so long. And basically being like, once the strike happened, even with Jordan progressing and there being a possibility of Jordan eventually making it to the majors, like there's absolutely no mention of, oh, the strike happened, let me go do something else. Like, how do you just leave out that entire important part after the whole 1994 season was canceled midway through? Yeah. And then Michael Jordan sitting around a march with nothing to do.
Yeah, it was just like they talk about like, oh, Michael Jordan wasn't going to cross the line as a scab, so he came back and played basketball. Like, it's like, no, it's way more complicated than that. And Terry Francona, said to it that if he got another 1,500 or so plate appearances, which sounds like a gaudy number, but that, it's a regular thing in the minor leagues. If he got, that many more plate appearances, that he would have made it to the major leagues. And they stuck him, again, comes in and he goes straight to Double-A ball. And because, as Reinsdorf said, like, we didn't have a facility at Single-A to house all the demand and the media and all the people that were going to show up there. But no, the labor dispute and all that could have been more of a part of it, because it just seems like, oh, he kind of got bored with baseball because he didn't want to be a scab and cross the lines way back in the spring training portion. And then he just comes back to basketball, because in my part, as a kid, I didn't know all the details about that. He goes to play baseball, he plays in Birmingham, and, he sends the fax and says, I'm back. But yeah, there was a missed opportunity there to get more specific into why. Did he feel like he scratched the itch of, yeah, I did this well enough, and I made my dad proud, and I feel like I've checked that box, and now I can cut, more of that decision, because that's wild. It's just one of the most wild things in sports, period.
Nobody believes the conspiracy that he got suspended, right?
No.
Oh, I don't know. I don't believe it, but I will say, Kellen and George, I
trust David Stern.
Well, the thing is, though, that's not fair. I don't believe it, but I think they should have 100% put more of that in the documentary if they want to be truth to what everyone believes and what's out there. They basically glossed over it and didn't add it in.
No, the guy asked David Stern on camera, and he said no.
Yeah, but people don't believe just David Stern off his face.
R.I.P. David Stern.
So
he's the commissioner who would have suspended him.
George, come on.
No,
hold on.
Marcus had something he was going to say. I could hear him in the background.
I am not in any way saying that I believe Jordan was suspended for that, George. But are you going to tell me, in the world we're living in today, that David Stern, if Jordan was suspended, David Stern would never admit it. It would self-serve him to lie. You're telling me? No, that's ridiculous. No. I'm not just gonna. He's not Jesus Christ.
But they didn't gloss over it. And then they asked that other guy, who I can't remember what he did, who worked for the Bulls. Bald-headed white guy wearing glasses, can't remember his name, and they asked him, and he said it was complete bullshit too. And then they asked the third guy.
There's no one going to admit it. Why would they admit it? How does that make them look good?
No. I'm addressing your point that you said they glossed over it. They did not gloss over it. They could have glossed over it, and they did not. They asked 3 different people.
I don't think they spent enough time on it at all. I'm telling you right now that if David Stern saying it so does not make it so. Period.
I know. It's not gossip. 3 different people said it, so they did not gloss over it. I dispute.
I disagree.
I dispute that characterization.
They spent 10 minutes total.
So, Kellen, we need a vote. So, do you think they gloss over, yes or no?
I thought we got way more than I expected us to. Honestly, I thought it'd be like a question. Jordan say no, and they moved on. But they gave us some time.
Though, that George's first comment that David Stern said it, so you shouldn't talk about it anymore.
No, stop. You're
That's
putting
exactly
words in my mouth.
You said.
No, I didn't say David Stern said it.
That's not how George said that.
Don't put words in my mouth. I'm just saying they did not gloss over it. They asked David Stern pointedly the question. You heard the question asked, and you heard his response. You then heard the question asked to that other.
His response is immaterial. He's not going to lie.
I'm telling you that they asked 3 different people in the thing.
I watched it. I disagree.
Okay. Then they did not gloss over it.
I don't agree.
Now, if you wanted to spend, they spent plenty of time on his gambling in the Atlantic City, that type of stuff.
Yeah, but I already touched on that, because when they spent the time on the Atlantic City, they said that, yeah, this is controversial, but it's no big deal because it's Jordan, and then he balled out the next day, which is a lie. So, like, come on.
But in this case, I do not believe they glossed over it.
I'm just saying that David Stern's comments mean nothing to me.
That's fine. That's not what I said.
You think he took the secret to his grave, Asti? Again,
I already said this. I don't believe that I'm not saying that. I don't believe there was a conspiracy and that he was punished like Pete Rose, but they glossed over it. I'm just saying that if that did happen, David Stern would take it to his grave. So to have your first comment be, well, David Stern said it never happened. Well, he's self-serving. So it's irrelevant what David Stern says to me. They could literally have not put him in. It would have been the same. He's not going to ever admit it. I'm not saying I believe that, but it's just, that would be like saying OJ said he didn't do it, so we know he didn't do it. Like, come on.
That's a whole other can of worms.
I mean, no one's. That's irrelevant.
Damn. All right, so Marcus, back to you. I want to talk a little bit about the actual filmmaking, and I know that you have a podcast called "We Should Do This Again Sometime" with your co-host Kat Chinetti, and where y'all deal with movies. And I just want to say, especially since you watch so many movies, especially documentaries, you've seen plenty of sports docs. We both love Hoop Dreams, and you've seen a lot of the 30th for 30s. From a movie standpoint and a documentary standpoint, like, what did you think of the Last Dance on those terms?
I mean, from the actual, filmmaking of it, I think it was pretty solid. I think we talked about how, it was definitely a propaganda to it, but what I will commend them on, we talked a little bit about this, or giving the shading to Scottie Pippen as his mentality as to why he chose the long deal, even though he would have been way better served taking a shorter deal and gambling on himself. That was something about Scottie I never knew about. And also I want to give them kudos also for the information on Steve Kerr, which is something that I don't think a vast majority of NBA fans knew about his father.
No, that story was completely new to me.
I did not know that. That was fair. Yeah.
And that actually, sort of leads you to see how active politically Steve Kerr is now. So the tidbits, like Asti said, like, they're tidbits that they did really well, that they pieced together really well. The time jumping and, going back and forth and out of time, that was all pretty decent. It was all pretty structured well. But if you're talking about, like, specifically a documentary where, there's had to be, like, some level of objectiveness, like, it's just kind of lacking. Like, you brought up Hoop Dreams, like, to me, like, the standard, if you're talking about, like, documentaries, especially sports documentaries, Hoop Dreams is, like, the gold standard. To me, Hoop Dreams, before OJ Made in America, Hoop Dreams was the greatest American documentary that we created until OJ Made in America surpassed it.
Do we agree that OJ Made in America is the best 30 for 30 ever right now?
I don't consider it 30 for 30.
I don't think it was a 30 for 30. Yeah.
Well, it's in the same genre. I know what you're saying. It was on ABC, but it was still from the same. It's in the same genre, even though it was the first one that they did the 10-part where it was on ABC and not ESPN. So it wasn't in the same quick 30 for 30, I guess, but in that same genre. Yeah, ESPN.
It's easily the best sports doc that came out of ABC, ESPN.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in that family for sure.
Yeah. But go ahead, Marcus.
On the same token, like, there are other. If we don't look at specifically how well we were entertained, if we're looking at a documentary to give us information and knowledge that we can extrapolate from the subject or subjects, like, you can probably think of 5 30 for 30s outside of OJ Made in America that gave you more information than, the Last Dance. Even I think one of the most underrated ones is the Vlade Divac 30 for 30.
Yeah. I learned something from. I'll tell you this. I've learned something from every single 30 for 30 in some way, and I consider myself a pretty, advanced in terms of knowledge. And the Last Dance, I probably learned the least in. Yeah, the Kerr thing and the vacation, but All the other ones, I feel like they peeled the onion and I learned something in. So that is disappointing, I guess, which is the overlying theme here, that we didn't get more legit information that is out there, that if they wasn't just narrative, it would have been out there. And Marcus, what I do want to ask you, though, is somebody who, like, from a documentary perspective, of a filmmaking perspective, do you think that they sliced in the sound bites and the interviews properly? And what I mean by that is, when you had this topic and this segment, did they have the right person speaking on it, or would you have liked to seen somebody else? Because the example I guess I could give is when they did all that on Steve Kerr, but that was more from episode 7 to 10 where Kerr was really involved. Granted, that was more of his Bulls tenure. But earlier in the doc, when they were talking about Jordan not speaking out politically and how Republicans buy shoes too, I would have liked to hear Kerr's true opinion on that, because he was a teammate of Jordan. We know how Kerr is now, being outspoken as a champion and Hall of Fame head coach of another dynasty, and how Kerr feels now, what he would have thought at that time of Jordan being where he is and not saying anything, and then how he feels differently maybe now in retrospect. We did not get those takes from Kerr on that segment, so I would have liked to hear that.
Puddins, it's your girl Holly Quinn, aka Dr. Holly and Quinzel, here to tell you all about it's like a podcast or whatever. We talk about nerd stuff and life stuff, and if you want to know what we're about, check out the Powie Awards, our 100th episode, Q and Slay, or Theater from Our Butts. Have a good day, Puddins, and love, trust, and belief.
Even if you point to that kind of question to ask, I think I don't want to say necessarily better, but I think even if you ask Charles Barkley specifically about that, because even as far as like level of fame and like balancing that, like, Barkley, out of everyone in our interview, is as close to as famous as Jordan was back then. Yeah. And obviously, we know Barkley was, I'm not a role model. He was a Republican, then he swapped to Democrat, like all that stuff. So obviously this is a guy, and he's obviously well outspoken or whatever, whether you kind of agree with it or not, or you think he's outlandish or not. Like, yeah, like they I don't want to say they breezed through this, like, as far as like different parts of Jordan's life, because there's so much that they wanted to cover. They basically covered from college up until the retirement. So it was really a juggling act. Like, yeah, they like getting Kerr's opinion on that would have been like something strong. Getting Barkley's opinion on that would have been pretty strong. I mean,
are you nervous that they didn't slice it that way because Jordan knows their opinion would have probably been negative? Or do you think they didn't want to give their opinion that was negative because as much as they give it now, they don't like touching and criticizing Jordan? There are people that Jordan did so much for that they don't want to mess with him.
I've only watched the documentary once, but from the best of my memory, anytime anything that would have come out that was potentially negative, they mostly stuck to Jordan's perspective without any challenge.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying.
And remember, Jordan owned the footage and was heavily involved in the making of the whole film and everything, other than the actual editing itself. But he knew what was going to be in there. And when the quote came out before it started that, this could be bad for me and stuff like that, I was thinking, they're really going to get into this shit about how mean he was.
To say that, Kellen,
but they didn't do that.
Cut that clip out and throw it through the entire podcast. Like, while we're talking, not even as a commercial break, just Jordan was the one who was cutting this entire thing and owned the rights to the film and was going to present this the way he wanted. Like, yeah.
Like that's not how you make a documentary. Like, that's just kind of flat out it. Like, if you're only asking the subject what they feel, you have to get reactions to it. Like, I mean, if we ask, like, OJ, what are your thoughts of being on trial, OJ? Like, no, OJ.
How you feel about not being black, OJ?
If anything, the subject's opinion, it's not necessarily the last opinion you want to have, but you need objective perspective.
That's why Made in America was so great, though. They got everyone's opinion, and it included Jay, but they got everyone's opinion, and even the defense team, and even Johnny Cochran, or not Johnny Cochran, but even his proteges, and all of those guys, F. Lee Bailey. they gave their takes where you could kind of peel away, and you could honestly, you leave that documentary and you can't even empathize with the jury no matter what you think of the decision. So like that, you got everyone's legit perspective and can change your opinion based on what you're hearing from them and understand it at the time. There's nobody changing opinions from this Last Dance unless they literally didn't know before.
You want to know what the silliest shit that they actually told like half truths on? It's not necessarily a lie that they told, but even when they kind of just got Jordan's mom and how, you know, they basically posed this idea that because Jordan's mom got Jordan to Nike, then bam, everything is all sold out sneakers and sneaker lines and sneaker heads and all. Like, bro, like, okay, if you want to bring to the table that Jordan's mom is the one who actually got Jordan in the door, you can build that opinion, but they left out completely that Jordan did not like the Jordan 1 and he hated the Jordan 2, and he was about to leave Nike until Tinker Hatfield saved it.
Right.
Tinker Hatfield, like that, like
don't talk about shoes too much. Ethan won't like it.
I know, but if you're talking,
Tinker came in on the 3, right?
Yeah,
yes.
If you're talking about the Michael Jordan legacy with sneakers, and you don't even breathe Tinker Hatfield's name into that, it's completely false.
Yeah, it was.
It was false. So it was just like they just, like I said, it was a blast of nostalgia. Like it was a blast of going on your ride of like me being a kid, you know, post Jordan winning titles and being in the I Like Mike era of sports, like the Olympics and the souvenir cups from McDonald's. Like you're going through this wild train of your childhood, and everyone fell for it. I don't want to say fell for it like it was a jig, but
yeah, it's what I think Jordan wanted it to be. That was goal.
Yeah, that's kind of the goal. Like we all went for the ride, and it was a fun ride, but that doesn't mean the roller coaster ride was intelligent. It doesn't mean that you could extrapolate really sort of pieces of who Michael Jordan was or who the Chicago Bulls were then. So they left a lot on the table that they could have.
I think Jordan underestimated the public a little bit. I think if you would have put that documentary out in the 90s or even in the early 2000s, say before social media, then okay, everyone would watch it and say, man, Jordan was Black Jesus. He's the greatest. There's nothing to criticize. Everyone else is wrong. Everyone else needed him. They would take all that away like Jordan wanted you to take away. But Jordan put it out now when people can literally go to just basketballreference.com. You can go all through social media.
And have nothing else to watch.
Like you got, nothing else to watch because everyone was in quarantine at the time, which is why it was put out then and not later. But everyone in the Brother has an ability to research things, to find things out. Nobody can break news anymore. Bloggers are breaking news. Like you're not going to be able to hoodwink the public if you're flat out lying now, like maybe you could have in the 90s. That's the problem.
Well,
like, this isn't the time.
And to tie that to kind of like Marcus's point is, you know, anybody can make a Jordan documentary. The unique twist about this was that of this footage that they recorded in 1998, I don't know if I'm desensitized to the fact that we just have behind the scenes access now and we didn't 20 years ago, but like I wouldn't say I was amazed by any of it just because that's how I expect a behind the scene, you know, every team does their own. The Penguins do one, Warriors, all these teams do their own behind the scenes internal stuff now.
It was revolutionary at that time.
For 1998, it was profound. We just didn't get to see it then. So the cinema, the stuff of them on the plane and this and that, it's kind of mostly benign. You get to see him in the locker room, you know, preparing and all that. But the more striking one was like him just sitting on the couch in that hotel room, you know, having a beer. Like that's like, okay, this is our hero in a position we've not seen him before. Him sitting in the locker room holding a bat, like, or whatever it was, like that's just like, okay, that's the narrative. But like seeing him kind of like struggle a little bit, you know, I could have used more of that. Now maybe there wasn't that in the footage, but like that was some of the more eye-opening stuff to me, not just, okay, here they are on the plane, here they are on the bus, here they are, you know, shitting on Jerry Krause again. Like that, I kind of figured we'd get, but seeing him kind of in moments of vulnerability and hearing him cry hearing the sounds of that picture that we all know of him hugging the trophy in the locker room.
Oh my God, that was rough. Yeah,
on the ground like that stuff was the most moving to me. Seeing him vulnerable.
Yeah, and I actually think the early part of the documentary, the early Jordan career, when you see him hitting the shot in North Carolina and then going through the Pistons and dealing with being the Lone Ranger, what others have had to deal with, certainly other Hall of Famers. I mentioned LeBron had to deal with that early in his career too, where he's scoring 60, but they're not winning, and then gets the Pistons and getting beat up and being skinny and having to build himself up, and then so on, and his father passing away. And yeah, that was certainly moving, and you get to see that story of perseverance. I mean, that is a great lesson that people can take away, and that was an emotional scene as someone whose father's passed away, and knowing, doing it for your dad almost in a way, like at the beginning. I think Jordan looks worse and worse as the career goes on. Basically, the early Jordan is a hero, and then he almost became a tragic hero towards the end. And I think that indirectly, like right after his father passed away, it feels like it almost like revved up the engines with him being more of, it is singular focus, it is championships, I don't care who gets in the way. And maybe that's how he won all those in a row. But like it made, you could take out of this and almost indirectly, even though he was trying to make certain people look bad, like Jordan and the Bulls, for sure. And they even had their little interviews in the Bad Boys, and they tried to do this there, even though they couldn't get too much of it in because it wasn't their show. But they tried to make the Pistons look bad. They try to, 100%. They hate the Bad Boy Pistons. They try to make them look bad. They want everyone else in the public to say, we're the Bulls. We were trying to get over them. They're beating us up. It was unfair. We had to conquer the demon, and then they're the bad guys. We're the good guys. You should have rooted for us. When in reality, a lot of that's not necessarily fair. I mean, that's how the NBA was then. They had to play that way to get in the middle of all those dynasties and all those great players. Isaiah Thomas did not have as many Hall of Famers around him as Magic Johnson had around him, as Larry Bird had around him, as Jordan eventually had around him. They all had 2 or 3 Hall of Famers around them. Isaiah Thomas did not have that cast of characters. He had
Benny the Microwave Johnson in the Hall of Famer.
There's a couple. My point is, there's a couple others. It was
I
not.
don't know if he is or not. I'm just fucking around.
He had Rodman, and he had Dantley. He had Dantley, who was traded before the title team. So he had a few.
For Aguirre.
Yeah, so he had Dantley. Dantley's in the Hall of Fame.
They traded the DC guy. I'm sad about that.
Yeah, but he didn't have as many Hall of Famers around him in terms of the title teams. He didn't have as much of a stacked crew as those other guys had. And the other end of it is, and I don't know, again, I mean, this maybe has some racial connotations here, but the Bad Boy Pistons get blasted for walking off that court and Isaiah ducking under Bill Laimbeer and not shaking the hands. It is the identical thing that Larry Bird and the Celtics did to the Pistons before. It is exactly the same, and no one talks about it at all. I bet you the casual fan doesn't even know it happened and still doesn't know because they glossed over it in the documentary, except Isaiah Thomas brings it up here or there. But the Celtics walked off before that game was over when the Pistons finally eliminated them. They walked off. I think McHale shook hands, and that's it. Larry Bird was in the shower before they were at Triple T.
I never realized that happened until this doc. So that's something I did learn because I saw that footage of like that aggressive high five that McHale and Isaiah had on midcourt, which is when they kind of forced them to shake hands. Never knew the Celtics walked out on them.
But here's my problem, and this is what Marcus was saying about Jordan's going to set the narrative, so you're not going to get the right interviews because it's Jordan. That's true. That you got Isaiah to finally say that he finally defended himself and said that happened. I want to hear Jordan defend that because you showed him an iPad with this happening. Jordan, what do you have to say? The exact same thing happened to Isaiah Thomas before that, and because it happened to you, you screwed him out of the Olympics. You basically ruined his life in terms of personal perception, and you're still picking on the man 30 years later. The same thing happened to him. Should he be mad at Larry Bird still? Jordan, I'd like to hear your answer, but that didn't happen because it's Jordan's narrative. That's what's crap. Like, that's bullshit. That was the same thing. Isaiah Thomas, I think, looked good because I legitimately think it's like almost Jordan's bullying him to this point. I mean, it's been 30 years of bullying. Like, he deserves to be in that circle of Hall of Famers that Jordan lets everybody else in from that period, whether they won rings or not. Isaiah Thomas had to come through all those hurdles to get those back-to-back rings. With his size, he had to overcome tons of adversity. He should have been on the 80 Olympic team, but he wasn't because the U.S. didn't even go at all. Like, Isaiah Thomas has got screwed on a few different counts, and Jordan is still picking on this man in 2020. And the reason why is because of something that Chuck Daly administered for the team that everybody agreed upon, that then Jordan has no problem with Chuck Daly, even for the Jordan rules. And then for the walk-off that the Celtics did as well to the Pistons, but Jordan literally says how much he respects the Celtics for how they handled losing their run in comparison to the Pistons, which is factually wrong.
Rest in peace, Chuck Daly.
And rest in peace, Chuck
Like,
Daly.
that's just that's the most annoying part of the lies. Like, it's just factually not correct.
Like I said, I was really surprised to see him, like Jordan, be like, "Oh, well, that never happened," and I didn't keep him off the team. And the Bulls and the Pistons hated each other. They hated each other. It was genuine bad blood. It was the third year in a row they were playing each other in the playoffs, and the Pistons barely got by in 90. The migraine happened with Scotty. They win in 90, and then 91 is when the Bulls finally get over that hump, and they don't just beat them, they sweep them. And and it got a lot of coverage because at that time it was the conference finals. Obviously, again, Michael Jordan had been elevated to this biggest player in the world. The Bulls had won. I mean, he was already getting there before, but the Bulls had won. They're going to their first NBA Finals, and then the Pistons just decide the worst possible time to just walk off the floor when the NBA NBC is just the first year. Like, all the coverage is there. Like, it was just bad timing because, honestly, if it was a CBS tape delay game, nobody would be sitting here talking about this shit, not even Michael Jordan. True. But because of the TV deal being so new and so fresh and so raw, and the cameras being right there capturing the Pistons ducking the Bulls and walking right by Scotty and Michael and everything like that, then them dudes took offense to it. And then when the media picked up on it, they were like, "Oh, there's blood in the water. We're going to kill him. We're going to kill him." And Mike has never stopped killing them ever since.
I know, but, like, doesn't he look like a bully a little bit? I mean, come on.
Michael Jordan's a bully, yes.
No, but I mean,
Brad Sellers.
I feel like Isaiah Thomas has actually got the brunt of it more than anyone. It's, like, unnecessary.
Well, I mean, Isaiah Thomas gets the brunt of the "if Larry Bird was black, he'd be an average player" comments, even though Rodman's the one that said it, and he agreed with it.
Rodman's the one who said it again, and nobody's criticizing Rodman for it again. Yeah, Rodman said it. Yeah.
Like Larry Bird had to come. Y'all saw the Bad Boys doc. Y'all saw
you even
LA
hear
Lakers or LA Celtics doc.
I actually tried to watch a lot of these interviews that Isaiah Thomas has been doing after The Last Dance, just because I want to really get his take, because they gave him some clips in The Last Dance, but I really want to get him to go on a half hour about this because he was involved as well, and we know we're not going to hear from Jordan. And every time they bring up, well, yeah, Isaiah, we heard about that, but we also want to bring up, do you feel differently, or what were your thoughts? How was it for you when you made that comment about Larry Bird being the great-eyed hope, or he wouldn't be as good if he was if he was black, he'd be just another guy? And then Isaiah said, "I didn't say it. I was just repeating Rodman's comments." And then they're like, "Oh yeah, we know that, but again, we want to hear from you." It's like they won't. That's not your comment, bro. Like, it's like the media wants that to be Isaiah said it or something. Like, it's literally Rodman's comments. We got audience that as well.
Like, Isaiah's team, and he always takes the fall for anything Pistons related, man.
He did Rodman a solid there. Is what happened.
Well, absolutely, because Dennis was still being like, he was in the Detroit system and he was fragile, and Chuck Daly took care of him. And the minute Chuck Daly left is when he started having problems, and they shipped him to San Antonio.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
But I'm gonna switch up speeds here, and Marcus, you're from DC, right?
Yes, I'm from DC.
So this has been hailed, obviously, and named The Last Dance. The Last Dance was Jordan's last season. It was his storybook ending with him holding that hand up and pushing off on Brian Russell and making the shot that won the NBA Finals in 1990. You were there when Jordan came to the Wizards, and no, everybody didn't talk. Like, no one was talking about it anymore because everybody's like, "Oh, it was horrible." It was horrible. Like, I was watching the video on YouTube. Like, the man played 82 games in 2002, 2003, averaged for 20 points, and then played 60 games in his first season back and was still averaged like 20 points, and only went out when he genuinely could not run on his knee anymore. And the the Wizards were making a playoff push at that time. Obviously, the doc and what you just saw, the propaganda there, it differs from what you saw from the Wizards years of Jordan. But I just want to know what kind of memories you have of that, because I mean, I was disappointed he went back because I was a Bulls fan, and all of a sudden Jordan's playing for this other team, even though they were garbage. And I'm sorry they were garbage then, and you'll admit that too. But I just want to know what your opinions were of when Jordan was a Wizard, because I've never asked you, and I just wonder if your opinions of him then were like, oh my God, what, Michael Jordan's with the Wizards, or it was kind of like, whatever. I'm just curious.
That shit was cool. Like, I mean, it was a thing. Like, to say it wasn't a thing would be a lie. But you got to think, like, I mean, the Wizards / Bullets, like, of my childhood, other than when they made it the playoffs and then the Bulls, did away with them very easily. Those Bullets / Wizards teams are like very middling. Rest in peace to Wes Unseld, but these were not Wes Unseld teams, man. So it was kind of like, it was kind of like DC is a football town. Like, no matter how good or how terrible the Washington racial slurs are, like, it's a football town. And so when Jordan came to town, it was a buzz. It was a cool thing. And yeah, like, he wasn't trash. Like, he drop like 40 and 50 back-to-back games.
He dropped 50 and then he dropped 40. The next game he played,
he was taking all those shots. He didn't rely on anybody else. Yeah, but he was great. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had, he had the moment with the pump with Rip Hamilton. I mean, like, it was a moment. Like, it wasn't like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think anyone really had much expectations for the moment, but it was still a moment nonetheless. Would I have, traded that for, him not drafting Kwame Brown? Of course, in a heartbeat.
Kwame.
I mean, but it was a cool thing, man. It was cool. Like, it's like if you go to like a nightclub, you have, pretty decent expectations. They play decent music. The prices are decent. And then you don't think about it a month later. That's the Jordan experience in BBC.
Identical records both years. Identical.
Right. Yeah. Which is crazy.
Wild.
Does any, like, I just had to ask Marcus that because it's the only time that I was probably going to ever bring it up. But like, hey, how'd you feel when you had Michael Jordan on your team? George, you already touched on a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff. I was going to ask you what you thought about that, but you already said that you didn't see anything groundbreaking. Let's talk about the moment in the closet, though, when he's playing the dice game with the security guards.
Mm-hmm.
And
rest in peace to Wozniak. That's my guy.
Yeah. I went and then searched him out and like read this nice. It was a couple years old actually, like an article I think somebody for Yahoo did, and talked to his son and everything like that, and talked about how Michael treated those guys like family and everything. That was cool. It was cool to read like about that.
Yeah, I didn't know about any of those guys.
That was a nice side of Michael that it came out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But George, what did you think about the scenes of the security guards and how important they were to Jordan's everyday life, especially like with him, as you spoke to a moment in the hotel where he was just kind of like he was down for a second, like just being able to see him sit back and kick back and just be with those guys, like even before the game and stuff. And like, there was very few moments with his teammates other than him giving them shit after the game or before the game.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the people we spent the most time with. Like, what did you think of those relationships? I know you already just said that you thought it was real nice and everything, but did you think it brought anything to Jordan's legend or mystique, or just him as a person, anything like that?
Well, it's fascinating how throughout the history of sport, when you go to the top of the top and the very best, and find out that these guys have a lot of similarities, and like, let's be frank, that Michael Jordan didn't really have a lot of friends, but I'm going to say didn't really have a lot of friends. And then the ones he does have friends, like Charles Barkley, I didn't realize until I heard Barkley that it was that estranged. I knew they had a falling out because, God forbid, Charles said something, critical. But, at the top like that, it's interesting that those guys, become his friends and become his family in a way. He was obviously close with his dad and his mother. We don't hear very much in the documentary about his brother Larry, we don't hear, he's in there, but we don't hear too much about like the family dynamic stuff is interesting to me, but I guess that's saved for a part 11 documentary.
His kids, we hear that later.
Yeah, and then his kids, and the gist about his kids was almost because they were producing episode 10 up until the last minute that the producers kind of heard like, man, maybe we should get some interviews with the kids and stick them in there. Or that's kind of what I heard. But
yeah, we just heard their takes on the jazz fan, which we all know those racist.
Jazz fans were mean,
and they're mean.
Utah's the worst,
and we're rooting for our dad's team. Like, okay, we got it.
But these guys, the relationship of meeting them and classic, and this is the case in a lot of places in the country where, the guys that are working at your stadium at night, whether they're ushers or security people, often have other jobs during the day, and these guys were Chicago PD guys. And you hear the story about, I forget his name now too, but the other guy who's with him had heart troubles and everything toward the end of his life. And Michael was there and Michael was checking on him. And these guys become his friends and his family because you can tell he's not really friends with his teammates. And he doesn't really, at that point in time, doesn't have friends because he's the ultimate competitor. And I get that. And the first guy I think of is Tiger Woods. And like seeing Tiger win the Masters now and how all those guys of this generation, the Brooks Koepkas and the Justin Thomases and everyone else are waiting at the clubhouse at Augusta for him to come up and hug him. That 1997 Tiger, 2003 Tiger wouldn't have done that because he didn't really have any friends on tour. He still looks like he doesn't like Phil Mickelson that much, but he didn't. But you can't really have. When you have a mindset like that is so driven to win and excel and be a champion, I'm not saying that you can't win a championship in other ways, but to do it and be considered the greatest, there is some kind of similar strain that runs through these guys, and it's having a close circle, and it's not really having quote unquote friends that play in the sport or the activity that you're a part of. And so for these guys, for Michael, these guys were his friends and were his family.
Yeah, the only thing I think, and the Tiger Woods comparison is perfect, but the only thing I can think of, and not to demean the friendship in any way, because it was great that he had that relationship with those guys, but the reason why Tiger and Michael Jordan maybe only had those type of grounds crew or a caddy or somebody, a trainer, or those people in their inner circle that they were truly friends with personally, and not the Scottie Pippen being his number two. They weren't personally friends, even though they were getting along well on the court, or even Tiger Woods with any competitors, or even some caddies of his. He's had an adversarial relationship.
He's had fallen out with them too. Yeah.
Yeah. So the point of it is people that are even on your team, that are directly on your team, they weren't able to be friends with. But I think part of it might be that if somebody is your number two on a squad, you're somewhat threatened by them because they could take your spot. Like I'll tell you this, we know enough about Jordan, George, no matter what he said in that documentary, when Jordan was playing baseball and the Bulls were in the playoffs and they were in that second round game 7, in Jordan's heart of hearts, secretly, there's no way he was rooting for that team to win. No way. He loved them losing without him. He loved Pippen sitting there. He loved them getting criticized. His worst case scenario would have been if Pippen dragged them to the finals, even if they would have lost without Jordan, because then the narrative forever would be they didn't win a title, but they got to a finals without Jordan, but Jordan never got to a finals without Pippen. Imagine that argument now. Jordan was in no way rooting for Pippen's single success or for that team's success with him not on it. I'll never believe it. He was even threatened by those number twos. He was threatened by teammates in some way to take his spot or his throne, and certainly threatened by any rival or any opponent. That's why he wanted to crush him like a bug. And Tiger the same way, threatened by Phil, threatened by those guys, even if they're way better. And we can say, why are you threatened by a guy that you beat all the time, even including a celebrity 2-on-2? But they thought they were threatened. They manufactured those things to keep squashing them because they wanted to be the best. But when you have a trainer or a grounds crew guy or a security guy or a PD guy, they're not threatening to you in any way. So it's easier to be friends with them. That's the only thing I can try to rationalize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely a inside look that I didn't expect from the film. So again, that's another part that I did enjoy, was seeing him actually kind of let his hair down, so to speak, with those guys, and
created some memes.
Created some memes for sure. That shrug meme is more iconic than Jordan's shrug now.
I think so. Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's incredible. But I mean, all in all, guys, that kind of wraps up the Last Dance questions that I had here. So I'm kind of wondering if anybody had some final thoughts they wanted to pass off before we get out of here. So Marcus, let me hand you this ball one more time and see what you got there, brother.
Well, I guess I asked everyone else. So what are you guys is coming away from this? What would you guys say is your, off the top of your head, your top 3 favorite sports stocks? Because I'm going, for me, obviously OJ in America 1. I'm going Hoop Dreams 2, but the DC bias obviously has to make me pick Lame Without Bias as number 3.
That's a good one.
But for
very good.
But for a fun pick, I got to go with the U. The U documentary was really.
Oh my God! First one
was really really fun. So I'll kick it to you guys. So what do you guys just say your maybe top 3 and maybe just one that's like
I gotta find
just a fun
title. Yeah, I don't even know. I can give a top 10 almost.
Yeah. I almost kind of want to like create the OJ thing as a subset because it's a sports documentary, but also it's like its own all-encompassing thing. The Len Bias one was just on last night. I just watched it again. That was great. I'm going to throw out Pony Excess, which was the story of SMU. And SMU, buying colleges paying money for players and stuff like that. The Vladi one I loved and hit me because and god dang, I forget the guy's name now who was the Serbian player that played for the Nets.
Petrovic. Reggie Miller to this day, including an interview with Dan Patrick last week, said that he believes if Petrovic would have stayed alive and would have had he would have been the greatest shooter of all time in terms of percentage. Obviously, there's no way to fully know if that's true or not, but that just shows you how good he was, and a lot of fans probably don't know who he was at all.
That one's up there for me because my ancestry is Serbian, and I've always wanted to go and visit Serbia and kind of learn more and everything. And it's a big deal for Vladi, who is technically Croatian, when he's in that car to cross the border, because there's still this rivalry between Croatia and Serbia, and there's a lot of ethnic issues in the former Yugoslavian countries. So that was a big deal, and that was kind of moving to see that type of thing. But we might even, I know Mike might even have to put on this list this Sammy Sosa, Mark McGuire thing when it the lost summer when it.
Oh, I forgot that was coming.
That could be good.
Coming, man. So
I mean, it'll be good, but I mean, I got to see how that goes. I mean, in terms of who's in there and who they're interviewing, but that
depends if Sammy Sosa has creative control.
Well, we know Sammy Sosa's in there in the previews, and you're gonna have to teach some people are gonna have to realize he's changed the color of his skin. But yeah, that's gonna potentially be a good one.
I would shock a lot of. I'm serious. That's going to shock a lot of people.
Well, there's been pictures. I feel like it's been out there that he changed his color of his skin, but maybe not everybody knows. But I feel like there's one that's no one mentioned so far, because a lot of the ones that have been mentioned, I think Pony Express is one of my favorites for sure, and that's one that taught a lot. And there's a lot of hypocrisy that was revealed there, but that actually was people telling true stories. And the Trans A&M, that was a great one. And obviously the U's. I didn't really like the second U as much as the first U, even though they're both.
No, I didn't either.
I could watch both of them, but the Fab Five that nobody brought up is definitely right up there. I mean,
Fab Five is really good.
I can watch that anytime. That's how I kind of rate it. Like, if I can watch it again, even though I know everything and I've already watched it a bunch, can I watch it again and sit there for a couple hours? I can do that with the Fab Five for sure. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of great ones. The OJ Made in America is definitely the top one for sure. There's not that many. It's almost an easier list to come up with 30 for 30s that I didn't like, because as much as people criticize ESPN, that's the best thing that whole family of networks has ever done. So it's almost ones that I didn't like to bring up more. I even, in a weird twist, and this is not going to say it's a favorite of mine, but it's just one that has to be brought up because it was done very unique. And normally when something's done this way, I wouldn't like it. But the one about the June date where you had the OJ
June 14th.
Yeah, and then
something like that.
On the it was like June 24th or 14th. It's one of it's in that neighborhood, but it's the same day where you have the NBA Finals game, the OJ chase,
June 17th.
Arnold Palmer.
And it actually ties into what we talked about earlier with that 94 baseball season, because that's the moment where Griffey's setting the record over Babe Ruth for a month, and people are realizing he could set the single season record, which he didn't get to finish the job because of the baseball season being stopped. But all that on the same day, and how Bob Costas and everyone dealt with that, and just thinking of how that would be dealt with today, and how different that would be today, because everybody on social media would be, that probably would be the day that social media would legitimately crash if it ever could. So that was really, really cool, even though I wouldn't say it's a favorite, because you didn't hear any of their actual interviews. It was just clips of that time. But the one, and I can't believe his name's escaping right now, but the one, the basketball player from Chicago that passed away as well, he didn't even get to have a college career. He died as 17 years old in high school. That's a great one. That John Howard wore his number. And he's he went to Simeon, and that, I can't believe I can't remember this man's name.
It was like, Derrick Rose bases like number. Yeah, I forget his name now.
Yeah, they all pay
Benji.
Benji. Yeah, that's a very, very underrated documentary, I would say. But
when you guys have not named yet, that I'm kind of surprised, not just a 30 for 30, but a regular sports doc, Wrestling with Shadows.
Oh yeah, I mean I guess I do kind of put really the WWE sports entertainment in a little bit different of a realm, just because there was a script involved even at the time, whereas these were supposedly real events. But yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, I would say even another one, even the Dream Team one that was on NBA TV, the 20-year anniversary in 2012. I think that's pretty good, to be honest. I think you actually get more takes on their thoughts than you did in the freaking Last Dance.
Yeah, you really do.
I actually do.
I don't think Karl Malone's talking like this either. I think he's using his normal.
It's a quicker. It's only an hour. Like, it's not like one of those longer ones, but they get everything in. So yeah, Wrestling with Shadows is for sure. I mean, I don't like anything else on the network really, but all those documentaries that Vice has been doing in the last couple of years on all those wrestling dramas and controversies.
Dark Side of the Ring.
Yeah, all of those are good.
Yeah. For sure. I'm not going to throw OJ Made in America in here, because it like Marcus said, it almost doesn't count as a sports documentary. It's just a great documentary, period.
Yeah,
so I'm going to say it's in a league of its own, so I'm not going to include it in here. My three would be Hoop Dreams, which we already mentioned. Got as a Christmas gift in like 95, something like that, and was hooked ever since. And I will sit down and watch those 3 hours anytime, any place, you name it. And I'll watch Arthur Agee and William Gates go through it again. Love that movie. It's so well done. 230 for 30s that came to mind for me was the Survive and Advance one about Jim Valvano and the North Carolina State 1983. I love, now that is kind of what I would have liked to see more of in The Last Dance, where they literally got the old team together that was still living, and they were all in a restaurant. And they had their little, they had their private interviews, but then they were also had the table where they were talking about, just remember Valvano and that team and all that stuff. I really thought that was well done. It was emotional, hit all the right beats, and it really told Jim's story, like through that whole season, and then winnings surprisingly. And then kind of a little bit of his downfall, and then ultimately his final days before he lost his battle with cancer. I love that documentary. And then my other one, 30-30, I love the U one, but I'm not going to go with that one. The Winning Time one with Reggie Miller was my first 30 I watched. Yeah. Love that one. I think that's excellent. The Bad Boys one is great. The Lakers Celtics one is great, but one that always caught my eye every time, and I watched it finally, and I knew the history a little bit, but I'd never really had a look this much into this boxing match, was No Mas, the one with Durant and Sugar Ray Leonard. And like, I was watching this like maybe a few months after it came out one time, and it was pretty late at night. And then when I saw Duran wave off and say No Mas, I was texting my dad. I was like, "Yo, Duran just quit." I had no idea. Like, I was mostly focused on, like, I mean, I know Sugar Ray Leonard was big, but I mean, I was still pretty young when this fight happened. I wasn't even born yet. It was 1980. So I really love that documentary, and the fact that Leonard goes to he actually goes to see Duran and they sit down face to face. And then the whole movie, they're speculating about why Duran wasn't in shape for the second fight and all these things, why he quit. And then Sugar Ray asks him directly to his face. He's like, "Why'd you quit?" And Duran's like, "I didn't quit. This happened and this happened." He still won't admit it. It's amazing. Just because the man's pride won't let him admit he's wrong, even all these years later.
Did anyone anyone of you guys ever watch When We Were Kings, the documentary for Muhammad Ali and the Rumble in the Jungle?
Not seen it, but I need to watch it because Russillo and Simmons was talking about it a few weeks ago, and it sounds freaking amazing. I need to watch it.
Yeah, it follows them like throughout that whole like Rumble in the Jungle, like throughout the entire thing. So
right,
I don't know where it's streaming at all, but if you can find it, definitely watch it.
Another one that's good that is probably surprising. But the Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan one, I thought that was pretty good. That was better than the movie with Margot Robbie. I mean, I thought that was pretty good. That one.
I didn't see the whole thing, but I think I came in the middle at one point and watched the rest.
I thought that was pretty good, and I think you actually get more. See, that's also the point of why I was disappointed with The Last Dance, because when you look at that documentary, you know that there's some people lying. You know that there's two sides of this story. You know that nobody's been really telling the full truth on either side to this point. So you got to be a journalist, and you got to try to pull these onions and these answers out of these people, or at least make it look like they're saying something. And that's what they did in that documentary. But nobody had the ability to do that or the luxury because Jordan wouldn't let them. So Jordan wouldn't let this be what it could have been. And I think I honestly think Jordan misread the public. If he would have let it be that way, everybody would have still came out of it. Jordan's number one thing he cares about is being thought of as the greatest of all time. And the same people who thought of it before would have thought of it after. He probably would have pulled more people in. LeBron even saying comments like that. He would have had people taken away that he's the greatest of all time on the court and that he's a little bit of a jerk and that he sold his soul to try to win. And that was his number one motivation. But he did have humble beginnings. He did have to overcome a lot. He did have a great relationship with his father. And he had reasons for this and reasons for that. And even the media hounding him a little too much, and he would have came away with all of those narratives being what they were, and I don't think he would have minded it too much if he would just let the documentary be that. And yeah, people might have thought he was a jerk and he was a bully and he was wrong in some instances, but I think people thought that anyway. It's almost like people going into Last Dance knew he was a jerk, knew he was picking on people, knew he was wrong in some instances, and then you come out of The Last Dance saying, yeah, I knew he was wrong in this and was a jerk already, but now I hate him even more. Like, damn, dude, like, come on. Like, if I was even a competitor of Jordan's, I'd even be more pissed. It's like Karl Malone, John Stockton, Gary Payton, Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, all these guys are top 50, all these guys, Reggie Miller, all these guys don't got rings. All these guys know that if they played in the era now, they might have them, and they couldn't get him because Jordan took them all from them. And they all respected Jordan. But if I'm watching them and I'm those guys, I'm saying, man, Jordan, we know you're better than us. You had a better team with you. We know we didn't get rings because of you, and you just can't give us any dap that like we could play ball at all. Like, damn. Like, it's like you didn't get the feel that we got in any of those other documentaries that we mentioned, because there's a lot of people that, you know, you even saw clips in some interviews where the dude's like cutting in saying, no, dude, like, what's the real story though? And then they leave that in that they maybe wouldn't have told them they were going to leave that in, so it leads you to believe one thing. We didn't get any of that in the documentary because anything that wasn't happy, Jordan, I'm sure, told the guy, we're cutting this, we're cutting that. He probably looked at the finished product before it was released and had to clear it. Like, if the star of the thing has to clear it before you release it, it's not legit.
I can pretty much sum up this whole documentary and Michael Jordan's thoughts while making this documentary in a few sentences they said to Larry Bird after they beat the Pacers in Game 7 in 1998. You bitch, fuck you.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like even Patrick Ewing said, like, you're still picking on me today. Like, come on. Yeah, you got to respect it. I would respect it more if he would just come out right and say it. Like, just be open with being a dick.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I definitely agree. So all in all, I think the documentary was fun. I'll revisit it sometime. I had high hopes my hopes were met, and the fact that it was something to watch and it was about my favorite teams, one of my favorite teams of all time. Yeah. So that was great. But then a reason why I didn't immediately say, all right, let's get together and talk about these episodes and everything is I did want to process it because it was one long propaganda film for me about Michael Jordan.
Wow. I've been waiting for that. I've been waiting to hear it. I just wanted to hear it.
Chicago Bulls. I think Marcus said propaganda first. It wasn't about the Chicago Bulls.
Marcus isn't a Bulls fan. You're that's what I want to say.
I am not.
I
needed that validation.
A movie about the Bulls' last dance in that last season, and one of my favorite parts was literally those parts of the doc where they're literally talking about the season, like that run when
that's what you thought it was going to be about.
Yeah, like when Pippen is out and then Jordan goes to Rodman, he's like, look, I need your help, and then Rodman like buckles down, and it's like the Rodman and Jordan show for a while. And then I remember that run, like when they lost to Rick Pitino's Celtics in the first game without Scotty, and then I remember the Bulls struggling, and all of a sudden, the Bulls just go on this run. They start winning, and Rodman is playing not out of his mind. I mean, he's doing what Rodman does, but he was invested in that stretch. And then, like the documentary said, as soon as Scotty came back and he realized that Mike wouldn't need him as much anymore, I think that's when the 72 Hours in Vegas happened, like immediately after. And the stories that were truly about the season, like each playoff series, I love that because you got to see each little breakdown when they played the Nets and how close they came to losing the Nets, and then the B.J. Armstrong game, the Charlotte game. B.J. definitely got a rub from the director, man, because they were like, B.J. Armstrong like killed the Bulls, and then Jordan came back and made sure that never happened again, and. The Pacers Bulls series was covered well. I thought I really could have used more of that because that honestly was one of the Bulls' toughest series, and they had history. Like Jordan and Pippen had both gone face to face, nose to nose with Miller over the years because Miller just doesn't shut the fuck up. Yeah. And I really wanted more of that than what we got. And then with the last finals and stuff, it was mostly the thing I remember the most from the last Utah series, besides them showing the last shot and stuff, was that damn Kenny Lattimore scene when Jordan's like jumping around like a damn idiot. And I'm like, damn, this song must be fire. And I think I found it. And I was like, it's all right. But damn, Mike was like, I think he had just went to the cocaine circus. So I don't know, man.
Yeah, maybe Marcus is right on that implication early on in the show here. Yeah, I think that the Pacers thing was big because I think a lot of people, if you have to name them the top Jordan rival in either conference during that run, the Pacers would get mentioned, but they wouldn't be the first team. People would say Utah because of the back-to-back. People would say the Knicks probably from the East. People would say Detroit before that. But they wouldn't say Indiana probably right away. But you could argue in those last three titles, the Pacers were their toughest test and arguably even more of a test than the Jazz ended up being, even though they made them in the final. So I think that it made Reggie Miller look really, really good because Reggie Miller, Chris Mullin was there as a Hall of Famer, but he was a bench player. Jalen Rose was there when he was still good, but he never became close to a Hall of Famer. Reggie Miller's dragging a club. It was a good team, but he didn't have Pippen. He didn't have Rodman. He didn't have the squad that Jordan
and Rick
did.
Smiths, though. And Rick Smiths would show out every now and then.
But my point is Reggie Miller got that team. Basically, Reggie Miller gave Jordan his toughest test, and I don't think Reggie Miller had the best squad around him in comparison to some of the others. So that was
absolutely not.
So that made Reggie Miller look really, really good. I mean, it still pains me that Reggie Miller didn't come back for a cup of coffee to win that 2008 Celtics ring that he keeps saying they invited him to be a part of. Like that would have he's the one guy that would have deserved a charity ring for putting up with that so long and kind of coasting. But yeah, that was cool. I mean, one guy, Marcus, you're like this. One guy I maybe would have liked to hear from. And they brought this up a little bit, and while I've been going to WCW and that whole NWO thing, I would maybe like to hear a little clip from Eric Bischoff and his thoughts. Eric Bischoff, he's out there. He does a podcast. He was working for WB not long ago and lost that job, but he's out there in media. He's willing to talk. He does after buzz shows. So I guarantee you if they called him, he would have done a clip. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, I don't think the filmmakers were thinking outside the box that well, though. But no, that actually would have been like you have the reason. Like he's obviously the guy that enticed him to go to it. So at least getting his thought processes on, bro. You know it's the middle of the season. Why the hell are you doing it? The reasons are obvious, but at least getting Bischoff, the actual soundbite to state the obvious in a crazy way, that would have been like a cool 45 seconds they could have had.
Yeah, because I would have also asked Eric and said, you've been highly open on the fact that the AOL Time Warner merger is what you believe killed WCW, and once you had the powers that be from Turner breathing down your throat, it hurt WCW and led to the downfall. You signed an NBA player who's a Hall of Famer in the middle of a series in the NBA Finals, put him on your show on their network. They have a relationship with the NBA, and you basically gave a middle finger. Were you at all nervous they were going to pull the plug tomorrow? I mean, that was a big risk that he even had professionally to even bring Rodman on there. The NBA was still a big deal. Like, he basically just said, screw you, NBA, screw you, Michael Jordan. I'm going to put this guy on TV. That was, I mean, the NBA, Jordan and the Turner could have basically said, Eric, yeah, this is cool with WCW, but you kind of, you're hurting the giant here. We're not with you. So that was a risk, and I would have, that would have been a nice clip to hear Eric's thought process in the meetings with Rodman, how that came to be, if it was a risk to sign him, if he was concerned at all, that even happening. I've heard him talk about dealing with Rodman before on 83 Weeks podcast, which is great, but we didn't get it in the Last Dance doc.
Yeah.
It would have been a different take, and it would have been fun for those wrestling fans like ourselves to see Bischoff. I was surprised they even showed the wrestling clip, and then of course Costas, Barry, and Rodman. He took part in a professional wrestling match in Auburn.
I love Costas, and George hates when I criticize him, but I feel like every time there's a documentary of anything, Costas looks bad. Like the XFL thing, like even when they have MLB Network and they were like discussing the Hall of Fame votes, like Costas just looks like an old guy who won't adjust to anything new. Like he just, like, he doesn't look good. And he should just go away and retire. Like, really, like any interview.
I don't hate him that much. I don't hate him that much, but I will say that, I mean, he said that during the broadcast back in '98 and stuff about professional wrestling. I mean, he was in this doc a little bit. But yeah, that is our thoughts on The Last Dance. George, did you have anything else you wanted to add to before we get out of here, sir?
That's it, man. That's it.
George's no, I'm done.
No, it was good. It was good. I enjoyed it. Propaganda, but entertaining. Went quick. Thank you, ESPN, for moving it up, although we're still here into June, so we could have, I guess, watched it in June. But
quite frankly, we could have.
Thank you for providing. It's June. Day 80, I don't know, and I'm still at home. But yeah, thank you for moving it up and for the content for the people. So,
and even though I'm the Brock Lesnar of Kellen's venture here, where I only appear as a special attraction, I will return, as George said. I will return if you do a recap of the summer of '98 baseball home run chase with Sosa. If you do that, I will come back for that show.
I'd love to, because that home run chase meant a lot to me, man. That I had a VHS of McGuire breaking the night McGuire broke the record. Mm-hmm. Didn't he beat it like when they were playing the Cubs? Is that right?
Yeah,
I remember that correctly.
It was, because Sosa came and hugged him and they did the hand thing. But I will say, guys, it depends on how they do this, on whether or not I'm going to be critical of it, because as you're talking about people getting interviewed, no, I'm being serious, George. Number one, if
you're going to be critical regardless, I know you.
Let me put it to you this way as a foreshadowing. If Jose Canseco is not interviewed, I'm not with it, because if you're going to be fair as doing a documentary, he had the book juiced. He played with McGuire before that. They're clearly going to talk about more than just that one season. And I can make an argument that he was actually a better overall player and even had a better overall career than McGuire if you look at the full numbers besides just that 1 year. You got and Canseco's been quite blackballed for the same infraction that everybody else committed. So you got to hear from him, or else it's not legit. He got to have at least one interview talking about that, especially if they're going to bash him. Like if McGuire sits on there and says, "Oh yeah, Canseco said this, but I was better than him." No, McGuire, you have 1,600 career hits. Like, come on now. You got to hear from everyone for me to fully embrace that one. But I have high expectations. I'd even like, I don't know, they're probably not going to do this, but I'd even like to hear from Bonds. I'd like to hear from Ken Griffey Jr. I don't know if they're going to get those guys in it, but number one, I got to hear from Canseco.
Okay. Well, that you definitely. Well, let's just pencil it in right now that we'll all have to get together and talk about that doc. Marcus, I don't know if you want to talk about that one, but you're more than welcome, of course.
It was a thing. It was cool. That shit was everywhere.
You did Michael Jordan on the Wizards side.
But
damn.
No. Actually, that shit was more exciting than his time at the Wizards. Like my entire school was turned up for that home run chase. So yeah. It was.
I had a VHS of McGuire breaking a record, a VHS of Jordan's last game from that year. So
I mean, there's a lot of angles. I mean, there's even a race angle they could go with that, because I actually remember when I was in how old were we? It was 98 in like what?
Middle school.
Yeah, we're middle school. I don't know, like 6th grade or something. But I even remember having a conversation with a teacher, and this was a white teacher, and asking, "Hey, who do you want to win this home run chase?" And the woman saying McGuire, and then thinking to yourself like, well, why? And this person kind of dancing around that, it just fits more of the bill of what we see with home run hitters in baseball and the guys who set the records and Maris and Babe Ruth. And I'm basically thinking, you want it because it's the white dude. It's the same thing that's been there for baseball history. Like that's kind of what it felt like that answer was. So like,
damn,
that's even like a country connection in terms of Sosa being a foreigner and McGuire being the all-American boy who then now
arm raised.
Yeah, no longer. They're both pariahs of the sport and never going to get it in the Hall of Fame. And other guys who did the same thing are getting more votes than them. Sosa's vote totals is nothing. So that is. Yeah, I'd like to. I'm actually a little skeptical though, George, that they're going to be as honest as it should.
We need to see. We need to see. I know. I'm going to hold judgment. But
I've read Game of Shadows, like
because you and I have been to the Hall of Fame where they got that one little case over there. Like these things happened. Here's a bat and a ball. The end, and that's about it. It's about the only difference.
Well, I mean, they have
the 20+ years of steroids that they pay to it. So.
Well, they have an area. They have that. I think they have more than what you're saying, but they don't have as much as maybe would have happened if it wasn't for the perception rate. But I mean, but they have a floor, and they do have more of Bonds than those two guys. But it's just interesting because there's some things in the Game of Shadows talking about a meeting between Bonds and Griffey where they're talking about, hey, these guys are not as good as us. If we go on roids, we're going to do this. And Griffey said no, and Bonds said, I'm going to do it anyway. Like, is that going to be brought up in this, George? Because if that's pretty much been
find out. Well,
we'll see. But I mean, a lot of people have said that. Pretty much everyone agrees that happened except for Bonds. So Bonds is clearly going to go on there and lie, I'd imagine. So we'll see. But I'm nervous they're going to miss out on a lot of things. Is that a multiple parter or is that just a one-off? I think it's just a one-off.
It might just be the one.
Yeah, they need like
just a one-off.
They need like 6 parts to probably do what they need to do. Honestly,
the whole steroid era could use a Ken Burns documentary. Completely, be honest with you.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if I'm almost scared they almost shouldn't do this at all if they're going to do it like in an hour and a half and try to rush it without anyone's interview.
They're going to let A-Rod host it too, probably.
Yeah, A-Rod.
Since everybody loves A-Rod.
I wouldn't be against that, but I mean, he'll probably get an interview because he's with ESPN now. He's going to be in there, but I'm pretty sure Bonds and Canseco are not going to be interviewed, which that's going to be hard to do this without them.
Yeah. All right, so we'll pencil that one in, but we're going to go ahead and get out of here. So for my semi-regular co-host, Marcus Show and Mad Love Robinson, I appreciate you being here, sir. With you constantly hitting us with the cools and you know, I gave you a break on the topics. Hopefully you didn't mind that. Mike Asti, I'm glad you were here, sir. As always, the heel to my face. Even though we were agreeing a lot this time.
I know, it's weird. Yeah, I was expecting we wouldn't. We had some good piece of radio there, the Kellen. I told you that the other day. I randomly came across some sound from legit
you did.
radio. Yeah.
The heel to my face sounds like the Claiborne kick.
It really does. It either sounds like that or it sounds like an athlete's foot commercial or something. Like it I don't know.
Yeah, it could be a Shaq commercial. Absolutely.
Yeah, Tough Actington acting. It's the heel to my face.
Great, always great having you on, and then Gerbo, who is essentially Marcus's now semi-regular co-host after being here for Ethan. Thank you for coming on and defending yourself so well against Asti's attacks and just watching the doc and talking it over with us, man. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Always happy to.
So I always end the episode the same way. I'm just going to go ahead and say, be safe out there, y'all. Make wise decisions. Wash your damn hands. And thanks, y'all.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and comment. This has been a Hyphen Podcast Network production.
They're the bestest. I'm getting paid at exposure.
Overtime.
Hey, there he is.
Finally. As always.
I don't understand how, like, you just literally click join and then you joined on.
No, see, fuck you. I knew in a minute I was going to come.
Yes.
Because I will tell you right now, I literally did not have to be invited. I joined myself.
Mike loves to do the video, how I video Zoom
my camera on so y'all can see me eating these noodles while y'all fight.
I knew it. I knew he was going to come in with like, well, I know.
The great thing is George tried to convince me that Zoom is a bad platform. He would literally be the only person in America that doesn't like it.
It's 10 years old and it didn't do well on it. But no, I literally conversation and I went to Skype made me sign in and do 2-factor authentication and change my password for some ungodly reason.
I never used Skype and I didn't have to do any of that.
I don't care. It's my experience. I don't care.
but I mean, that doesn't make sense. Your experience is people are making jokes that the whole generation is going to be called the Zoom generation, and George couldn't even get it to work.
Right. Correct. We have fixed those problems now. 5 months into what feels like 5 months into this. So.
Well, George, I want to say that now that you're here and you're calming down. Yes. I do appreciate all your hard work on the Ethan episode with Marcus, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh man, no, absolutely. We had a great time. Ethan was excellent, and it was just cutting it up for a good hour plus. No, it was a good time. We appreciate you.
When he started cussing, I was like, oh hell yeah, he's in there. He's in there. I'm like, he ain't holding back. This ain't radio. I'm like, that's what's up.
No, he gave it to us. He gave it to us straight. So that was good. And he's even said he was going to add some more. Potentially some in the paperback version of the book. It's doing so well. Victory Machine, making an unmaking of the Warriors Dynasty, that he may add some more content in the upcoming paperback. So that's awesome.
Nice. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to that. So, how are you, Gerbo?
I'm good. Now
that Asti attacked you.
Always. I was ready. I knew it. I knew it was coming. I was primed. I knew something was going to happen. So.
Well, right now, if we were doing a world ranking, you'd have to agree that you're the dumbest Zoom person in America.
No, see, God, jeez. I fixed it. I told you I fixed it.
But nobody else had a problem initially.
See, I knew the minute that I said, like, I was going to have because literally I signed into Skype and then all the stuff is gone and it's like, you're signed in as George Gerbo. Where's your chat history? Click here and just, fuck Microsoft. Why don't use any of their products except Skype? But no, I knew the minute I was going to get in, his ass was going to be in here already and it was going to lead to this shit. So I was ready.
Because all I literally did is I was actually about to say, I was about to ask for an invite and then I just clicked on the thing and I was like,
I didn't have enough Kellen
was like, George can't do that. And I was like, then George is a dumb.
No, it's my fault. I sold you out. I should just silently sent you the link. And I was like, hey, let me help George real quick. And then Asti's like, what's happening? What's he doing wrong? I'm like, I don't know.
I forget.
I set you up for failure.
Well, I guess it also was funny that the amount of people that were able, I'm able to hook up, get people to use Zoom that I feel like never use any technology, never had to produce anything of their own in their life, and then all of a sudden George couldn't get it done. That was just.
So can y'all go ahead and tell me what the problem is with Zoom? Let's hear the Zoom rant.
No, so the first time I did it on my MacBook is 10 years old, and I started. I was like, okay.
You got a newer Mac, though. Why didn't you use that one?
Well, again, that's why the last time we did it, I did it on the newer Mac. So and again, Mike is talking about an incident that was in March at this point now, and I couldn't get it to work. And so I just defaulted to our normal, we use a Zencaster to record our audio. And so we finally used Zoom the last time. It's mainly because I don't want to be tethered at the big-ass work computer I now use to work from home, because I'd like to get away and, a different space in the house for something different. But it did not want to work on the laptop, probably because I'm running like a version of iOS or OS operating system on Mac that's like 5 behind whatever the current one is, El Capitan, whatever it is. I'm like 5 behind. So
I'm just saying, just use the newer laptop, then you can go carry it around.
No, that's what I did the last time we did it. I used it on the newer computer. I'm saying on the laptop, which is older, I don't feel like updating the operating software just so Zoom can work. So
but just don't use it. Just don't use that one.
Yeah. Well, why don't you update the iOS just because it's updated?
This is going to sound like half conspiratorial. I've not lifelong, but most lifelong user of Apple products. I never update it when they tell you to, because something always is wrong. It's just there's gonna be a patch or this. Like they're always like, update your iPhone, and then everybody does it, and they're all pissed off because it sucks. So I'm the guy. I'm rocking an iPhone 8 with it's like, download the new software. Nope, I don't want your new software. Old software works fine. They just want you to update so they can fuck around in your phone and do other things, and it doesn't work out. So
I never update when I have to, but after a year or two of not updating, and then I lose memory, and it just sucks up, and it forces you to basically do it. I can never.
We are near that with this laptop. We are near the point with the laptop. So.
No, but the difference also is, George, that you leave out the part where your initial issue with Zoom is I think I have the text still. You didn't say it was an issue because you were using something and you didn't like it. You literally said Zoom is a bad platform.
I do not recall that. You go find the receipts. I do not recall that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's verbatim, but you basically said no. I think it was something to the effect of, no, Zoom doesn't work as well. Zoom has choppy sound.
That's because of my experience with my device.
Yeah, but you generalized the whole thing without saying any of your previous experience.
Because of my experience with it, which was due to my equipment here, which is not up to speed. Marcus, how are you? I miss you. How you doing?
I'm doing lovely, man. I'm doing lovely. Okay. I mean, I got my updated iOS for my MacBook. It's running smooth as eggs, man.
I also have a Mac. Yeah, I have a MacBook Air. I had a MacBook Pro before.
I'm going to have to look into it then.
And my MacBook Pro I had for like 6 years. I never had any problems. But now I have a MacBook Air, and it's fantastic as well.
Shout out to my HP.
Wow.
I had an HP back in the day, but then I went to the Macs.
Well, this is the one that Angel won from me like 2 Christmases ago.
So,
it's still newer then, so that's good.
Yeah, it is newer. It's way better than the one that sounded like an airplane taking off all the time. So